even some of the high Freemasons that actually even interact with these demons, they believe a totally different script and narrative. They're under some massive delusion because they think they're getting power from it. Whereas I guess you could say they're being ridden like a donkey.
100%. And as they get higher and higher and higher, they need to recruit more and more to feed the demon that wants to feed off them. And that's all it is.
And that's the massive deception, right? Is that the power that they get, it's worldly power. You can see why the world has been so conditioned to value that stuff, because then they can stay in that frequency and yield all this power in this world. But once they lose this worldly power here, they've literally got nothing.
Not only that, we're redeemable. Lucifer is not redeemable. His judgment has already been passed. He's done and dusted. He's still trying to access God through us. And when we realize that he is nothing, he has no power except what we give him through our consent or agreement, we've won the battle. It's already done and dusted. We don't have to play his game.
You're listening to Natural AF, the podcast exposing suppressed truths about health, reality, and human potential. I'm your host, Isaac. I'm the founder of Natural Art Form, and I'm joined by my wife and co-host, Alexa, a Site K facilitator and human design coach. Together, we explore a wide range of topics that encourage others to be bold and embody who they truly are, while staying grounded in our lives, relationships, and deepest purpose. We bring some pretty unconventional perspectives and solutions to the table, so if you're ready to challenge the status quo and have a few laughs along the way, you're in the right place. Thanks for joining us. Let's get Natural AF. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. This is Natural AF, and this is going to be an interesting, power-packed roundtable discussion. We've got Rachel, Vaughan, and Dotti.
Yeah, welcome back to both of you. So good to have you both on again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, this is exciting. I feel like I'm a little bit out of my depth. I've got these three very powerful women surrounding me, and we're going to get into some spiritual topics and things that are of interest, and also there's some hidden gems of conversation of some details that each of these ladies will bring to this, and we'll have some interesting questions.
Yeah, well, we really need to cover, because obviously we've had both of you on individually, and we tend to talk a lot about spiritual topics on this show. So I really wanted to sort of open it up to like more of some of the misconceptions around spirituality, false teachings, those kinds of things. And I know that you both have, you actually both have very similar perspectives on a lot of things, but then there's some things I know you have different perspectives on. And I think that's really important to share with people, because we all come to our own form of spirituality in our own way. And I know that I've definitely learnt from a lot of people, but then had to figure out like what sits right for me. So, I love that idea of being able to have, this open conversation with different perspectives.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, before we jump into sort of the topics that we want to cover, we wanted to open it up because we know, Rachel, you've been, you're always doing so much. We always love seeing you on socials and everything you're putting out, and you've been traveling a lot and doing a lot of things. And we listened to your, I guess you kind of almost did like a panel or a roundtable with Max Lowen and a couple of other ladies at the beginning of the year with sort of predictions, and you were reflecting on predictions from the previous year. So anything you want to share with what you're focusing on at the moment, and maybe in relation to what's going on in the world at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's big. It's big. We are here at a very interesting juncture and change. So I do a prediction series with my dear friends Angie Sutherth-Walsh, and Max Lowen jumps in. She's my bestie when she can. And this latest frequency upgrade that we've had is absolutely phenomenal. So over the last 2 to 3 months, a lot of clients, a lot of my friends have gone up into what's called an usher frequency. So ushers are, and I'm very curious to see what Dotti sees around this, but ushers are souls that are incarnate in a physical body that are here to help souls pass over. So you'll often see them as psychopompers or shamans or healers of some description, and some who have that frequency, which is it's a rainbow in the aura. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a whole full rainbow. Some are a pastel rainbow, some are really, really bright. Some, like Darius Wright, for instance, at the CCC last year, his was gold and then green, which is an emerald frequency, which is, a different, there's all these different versions of this usher frequency. It's absolutely fascinating. So I noticed this upgrade. I was a bit blown away by it. And then it fit in with a lot of downloads that I've had. And then I was speaking to Kelly and Campbell of Tartaria, Australia, and I was talking about these souls that are now releasing. So we've got all of these souls that are moving into the dimensions that they belong in. What we've had for a very long time is a satanic system where the earth was kept in the lowest possible frequency because our consciousness as humanity was kept low. A lot of us are manifestors. We're actually very powerful humans. We work with the animals and the trees and the plants as well. They are also extremely important, but we are also part of the process, and there's a lot of us here now. And if we're all in a fear state, that keeps everything slow and stops everything from moving forward. Well, the earth has just basically come up in frequency. There's all these different things that are happening. We've got planetary alignments, and we've come from, I believe, the Satya, from out of the Kali into the Satya Yuga, out of Pisces into Aquarius. So there's all these different things that are happening, all these solar flares. Everything's all working together to bring her into a higher frequency, and we are all going up in frequency at the same time. And what's happening is the ley lines that were forced in a anti-clockwise spiral by all of these piezoelectric Freemasonic structures, churches and things in the crossing point of these ley lines, which are the Earth's meridians, it's going back in the right direction. So the souls are being released. And it's actually, Kelly and Campbell pointed this out as being the rapture. I didn't really understand it to that point. So I don't see this as a cataclysm. It's not the end of the world. The apocalypse means awakening. It's the apocalypse in a negative term for the Satanists. This is their end. And just this recent upgrade, seeing all these people reach this usher frequency, we are in such good hands. So I'm very optimistic now. I've always have been. I knew that something good was coming, but we're right in it. We're right in it, so it's a bit crazy at the moment. That's why we've got so much negativity going on.
Can you explain the difference between the sort of like rapture that you're mentioning and the way that it's commonly understood?
Yeah. So from my understanding, because my grandmother's a Jehovah's Witness, supposedly people just lived piously, and then one day God would just take their soul and they would leave their body, and then they would just be in heaven. And that was all going to happen en masse. And all those that had passed who hadn't moved forward would all go en masse too. This is my understanding from the JW point of view. That's happening, but it's happening not as an apocalyptic thing where the end of the world is occurring and all of these pious souls are the only ones that go. It's just a shift. So that energetic, so, you know, it's a bit like a toroid. These frequencies, you're supposed to have dark souls going down into hell, and they do go down where they go into a density. Light souls expand out, and this is this normal frequency shift. It's a flow. It's been stopped. It's been very, very controlled, so it hasn't moved properly. So that's actually prevented the Earth from going up in frequency for a very long time until now. That's my understanding. You would probably know better from the biblical standpoint.
Yeah, tell us, Dotti, what your perspective on this is.
From the biblical, what they've taught, which I've never accepted, can I just say that, is that, you know, it's the chosen frozen that get, you know, taken up, and the rest of us have to stay here, you know, on this earth that will just be like hell on earth. And, you know, a lot of movies depict it on, you know, people are struggling to live, and, you know, because, well, you didn't make the chosen frozen. And I think it's JWs that talk about, you know, the 120,000 that get taken up, and, you know, they've got to go knock on doors to get their brownie points to make it. And I just, you know, and the other factor is from a religious aspect. If you haven't accepted Jesus, well, you're not going to, you know, make it up into the rapture as well. And it's such false doctrine. And, you know, it used to make me angry, because I'm like, that is not who the Creator is. That is not the character of God. And I always put it to the fact that, you know, when you have a child, you don't dangle it over the fire to see if it's still going to love you. You know, you don't punish it to see if it'll go, but I'll do anything you say. Like, any person in their right mind will go, well, you're a narcissist and I'm out of here. So that is not the right teaching at all. The rapture, for me, is an ascension. And the ascension is a spiritual experience that we can have every day, all the time. We are ascending into higher realms and different dimensions. And so to me, I'm raptured all the time, if you want to put it like that. And it is just this incredible encounter that we have, communication, relationship with God, that causes you to live in a place that is above all circumstances and situations that the negative energy wants us to live in, wants to stay downtrodden, wants us to be victims and, disempowered. So when you live in a state of rapture and ascension, you are always empowered.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking as you're saying the word, I was like, that's where the word rapt comes from. When you're rapt, when you're like super excited and just, ecstatic with something. And that is the meaning of the word. So it's just so funny how, and that's the biggest thing with the Bible is you have to be so discerning, because what they've done with so many of the words is they've inverted the meaning, and it gives this completely warped, incorrect meaning to what they're actually saying.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting was that I used to read we had comic books. There was these like Archangel comic books I used to read, and then the books Left Behind, this series. I remember all the details about it, but it starts out, it's the rapture and planes are falling out of the sky because the pilot just like, well, actually, I think the whole body, it was like their whole body was actually taken and just left like clothes. So it's like your whole body was just disappeared with your soul, and you all just went at once. So planes are falling, cars are crashing, all this stuff is ensuing, and then everyone else left over, the ones that were friends with the Christians that were always trying to like preach to them and tell them to like accept Jesus, they're like, oh shit, like they were right. Now we're all going to suffer and die. And it was just like this hellscape on earth for the rest of the time until the final judgment, apparently. But like, yeah, they've got this whole thing and they're like, we know that, and they preach it with such conviction that this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then this, and like all these very like literal translations of things. Even with Trump, they're calling him the Antichrist, and I would say he's got some Antichrist traits, but even at Jesus' time, I remember this in the Bible, Jesus said, beware of that, because they're already here. Like the spirit of this Antichrist is coming, and it is already here with you, and it's been going on, and we just see these patterns repeat. So yeah, Trump is like Antichrist version 33 or whatever
How many times is there going to be the end of the world? There was the 2000, the Y2K, it's the end of the world. Then it was like the 2012 thing, and then it was COVID, and like it's always something, but they take it so literally, like the whole world's going to end, and it's not. It's a very metaphorical meaning.
And every time that happens, there probably is an ascension going on, and it's to bring everybody down again. So when we went into the 2000s, we went into the feminine, the number 2 in numerologies. 2 is the number of love and femininity. So we came out of the negative version of patriarchy, and I don't have a problem with men. I've got sons. I think men are wonderful. But matriarchy in its evil form is also disgusting. And I despised the women who abused me as a child more than I did the males. That 1 before the 9 or before the 8 or before the 7 in the patriarchy, that 1,000 years, that's done. So as we came into the 2000s, they had to start to really lay it on, make it as dark as possible. It's not worked. It just is pointless.
It will never work.
No. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, 2 things. Speaking of number 22, so we got married on the 22nd. And what I thought was interesting, because obviously we've chatted with Rachel before, and we understand this thing about the ley lines and about these dates where the dark forces do their dark stuff and try to bring the whole world down. And Alexa picked that date. It was kind of just because you liked the number 22 and other dates didn't work.
I kept checking all the numerology for the dates I was picking, and we initially wanted like the 111, like we looked at the 11th. The 11th of November, I think we looked at, and that was like way too soon. And then I wanted the 11th of January, and that wouldn't work. And then we sat on it for a while, and I was like, I don't know. And yeah, I just picked it because Isaac was like, let's check the astrology and before we pick a date. And I was like, no, babe, let's just pick a date. And I just trust that it'll be the perfect day. And we did it basically on the equinox, and I didn't realize until after.
Well, and that was the same day that I saw this post from you, Rachel, talking about the equinox and doing something joyful and beautiful on a day like that. And
Yeah.
I was like, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it was so perfect because we had Dotti facilitated our ceremony. Obviously, we had the celebrant there to do the legal side of things, but that's why it was so important because, we didn't really want to do a legal marriage, but we had to because Isaac's from a different country. So, and having Dotti there, and that's why I was like, it could not have been more perfect for that talk. And everyone that came said it was the most beautiful, day full of love. Everyone felt the love. Mm. So we did our part. We did our part on the equinox.
It was a beautiful day.
Sorry, Dotti, go for it.
No, I was just saying it was a beautiful day. It was a lovely wedding, really was. Yep. Yeah. And the double two is a double master number too as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got that double love factor because you've got the 2, and then the 3 is expression and sensitivity. So you're going to be able to talk to each other beautifully. It's just beautiful. And you did it in a 1 year.
Yeah.
What a perfect year to start it off.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Just
everything aligned so well. And then we did this, we had an astrology reading, just a friend of ours looking over our charts. And I was like, can you put which one was it? It was our relationship chart.
Oh, like the synastry.
Basically doing synastry, which I always like just seeing the little things, not to, I've pretty much left behind the idea that, we can look at astrology and we can pick things and predict everything, stuff and this and that. I just like seeing what lines up, and just because it's like you're kind of peeking through the code a little bit of the matrix, and you're like, oh wow, that was perfect timing. And there was something on there about our north nodes lined up with the day, the north nodes on the day. So it was everything was just literally in alignment. So it's fun to look at that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, it makes sense of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's dive in actually, and I'm going to start with, because it ties in a little with this whole idea of the rapture, but the ascension and sort of these souls, a lot of these souls that are leaving the earth, and also the ones that are coming in, because we know, don't know if you guys listen to Edith Ubuntu Chan, but she's done quite a few interviews talking about this, and the last one she did on, I think it was on The Way Forward with Alex Zach, she talked about this vision she had, or this. She was communicating with her baby in spirit before he came in. And he basically showed her what she described as this sea of orbs. And he was saying this, I just got cold shivers. This is what's ready to come in, and you have to be, because I don't think her and her husband didn't want kids or something. And he was like, if you have to be part of this to bring in these new souls. And she basically said that was a big part of what changed her mind, and because she started having all these really wild spiritual experiences. And I 100% believe, and I've met, just the kids we've met in, the Living Free community, and people that are doing things differently. And these kids are they are on another level. And so I think it's this, it's this definitely, it's going in and out. I want to talk about the astral realm and astral travel, because we just had a friend over last week, and she's amazing. She used to be religious, and she now looks at the Bible and reads extra biblical text to really pull the truth out of it. And she reads from the Sephir, is it called? What's that book called?
Yeah, there was something about that. It's Sephir.
There's a book that basically it takes any word that is, how they just do weird words, or it's Old English, and it breaks down every possible meaning for that word, so that you can then read it and go, okay, this actually makes sense. And that's what she's done. She's brilliant.
It takes you a while to get through a book, because each word can mean 4 or 5
so many different things. Yeah,
it's in Hebrew. Concordance.
Yeah, it's kind of like Strong's, but it's something else. It's a different version.
Yeah. It's got a different name. Anyway, so she's read all this stuff and pulled a lot more actual truth from it. And she was listening to this guy tell his story about an after-death experience that he came back from. And he talked about these 3 realms that he moved through outside of Earth. And the one in between, I think it was the second one, was basically what he described as the astral realm. And it's really interesting because Dotti's talked about this before a lot, and she says astral travel is sort of not something you want to do, because that's where sort of witches and warlocks hang out and whatever. And what this man said, and Kristen then, she was telling us this also correlates with stuff that's in the Bible about these certain realms. Before you get to the last one was more of this heavenly realm where he experienced Jesus there and all these things. But this astral realm, he said there's a lot of spirits that hang out there that disguise themselves as good, but they're not. And I was like, that's super interesting. So I'd love to, maybe you share first, Dotti, because I can't remember if we talked about this on your episode, but what you've learned about the astral realm and the things that the people you've actually met, and the things that you've learned from them that have sort of done this astral travel stuff.
So my experiences with this is that there was a number of stages in my, 40 odd years of moving in the spirit that connected with people that are coming out of witch covens, and learnt a lot from them, and they were teaching me about some of the things that happened. So this is what they've taught me, just so that you know, because sometimes they would come and visit me, and I'm like, the next day I would go, you came into my room last night, like, was there a reason why you were there? And because from the witch coven perspective, and again, this is what they've shared with me personally, is that they have different levels of where they are called to go on to assignment by different sounds or words. And then she was not aware that she had come to me and visited me. And I was like, well, I said to her, I said, well, in that incident, what was the best way that I could reach you in the spirit? Because at the end of the day, everybody is important, everyone has value. And I know, again, firsthand from witnessing people that used to do spiritual warfare, that they would go into the astral realms where they met with witches and warlocks, and they would cut the cord that connects them to their body, which would actually kill them. And that's never my heart. So I said, okay, being aware of all of that, and I've done a lot of stuff in that realm, but I've never agreed with the way people have conducted themselves towards those people, as in witches, warlocks, Satanists, whatever. I strongly believe that everyone should have a chance to come to the light and come onto the right side of things. Whether they want to or not is another story. So she said the best thing to do is to actually still share the love of God towards them, because when they go back, that because they're departmentalized in their personalities and characters, you can bring healing to that particular personality, that can then help the other personalities get breakthrough as well. So I know people talk about astral traveling. I understand the concept of what they're teaching, but this is my point of view, is that I can go wherever the spirit wants to take me, and I'm not restricted to different realms or portals or, different levels of the spirit. I can go wherever, and I do. I go wherever the spirit takes me or where I want to go, because everything is opened and available to me. I'm not restricted to the different realms, because a lot of people talk about the first, the second, and the third heaven. And I would go, well, why would you settle for the second or the third, the first, second, or third? I want the whole lot. And that's just who I am. I was born like that. It was like, if I can't speak to God direct, he's not worth talking to. I'm not going through a priest or anything else. I've got a direct line, and God has accommodated that. He has certainly met me in that. And so, I know that there's different realms where different entities live. I get all of that. But I'm not restricted to just one realm. Like, so many people talk, oh yeah, we're in the astral realm, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. That's just me. I'm being honest. And
yeah.
But I'm open to learn. I'm always open to learn, but I always go back to my personal experiences, my encounters, that no one can talk me out of. We can grow in it, but they're my encounters.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, so what's your experience or understanding of the astral realm, Rachel?
I mean, I have astral travelled, and it was part of the MK Ultra programming from childhood. So around about 14, I actually used the training to drive my father from the house. So I could project my astral body and watch him sleeping, and it terrified him.
Oh,
So
wow.
eventually he left me about 6 months, roughly between 6 months and a year. I pretty much had the house to myself. He'd come home with food occasionally, and then he'd just go. But there was still a lot of stress because there were tunnels and people could get in at any time, and I was forever, a nervous wreck. But it's very interesting because you really wanted me to remember that. So in around about 2007, I got this message back from one of my family members whom my father had told a family member who told a family member who told me that he said I appeared in his room in the middle of the night and crushed his testicles. So he really wanted me to remember what I could do. He then made this big story up about it being my brother Andrew doing it to him, and did put this AVO on my brother. And that all went through court, and my brother won. It was absolutely ridiculous. My father really wanted me to remember what I could do. So it's a really interesting thing with what my father put me through as a child, and wanting me to remember, and wanting his other children to remember, because he wanted us to know how clever he was, or how clever he thought he was. I've had multiple people in my life tell me, long-term relationship partners and others, that they've seen me at the end of the bed. And I don't want that. It's scary as fuck. Poor things. But I wasn't like that. I just was there, and then they would look at me and I'd be in the bed, or another person said, were you on the couch? And it's like, no, I wasn't on the couch in the middle of the night. I was in my bed, but I saw you. So, so people can do this, and as Dottie was saying, it can be a dissociated part of you. You don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah.
But other people will tell you you're doing it, which is freaky. So I guess it's kind of like sleepwalking in a way. So your astral body can go off and do all sorts of interesting things and come back. And the astral body can be quite dangerous because it can physically harm. And that's why my father wanted that message to get back to me. He was obviously really annoyed that I did this to him, and he wanted me to know as well that he knew that it was me. I have no recollection of it, but it's probably something I would have done. I probably tormented him quite a bit throughout my life while he was alive, because he deserved it. But see, again, your astral body might often do this work. And I know I've got a lot of clients who I get the message through that during their sleep time, they are off doing so much work. Not stuff like that, but they're off doing psychopumping, setting souls free, grid work, bringing light down, doing all this amazing work. And they wake up in the morning and they're exhausted on a soul level because they've been doing so much. So
That's this one right here. Yeah.
Multiple different dimensions, absolutely. And exactly the frequency that you're at now, Alexa, that's exactly what you would be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
That's really interesting, Rachel, because I do that as well. But I've never called it astral traveling. I just have, I'm moving in the spirit. And I've gone on assignment. I've been overseas, and helping people in war-torn countries to escape, and done so many assignments. I love going on assignments at night time. It's my favorite. Yay! But I've never put the word astral traveling attached to that, because it's just not. It was never on my grid. So that's really interesting, and have popped up in people's situations, or they've seen me before I've come, that sort of stuff. So is that, I'm asking the question, is that what you deem as astral traveling?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're projecting your astral body to that location before you get there, so they'd see you beforehand.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is that can happen without your conscious awareness, because what you both said, that's what you were saying, Dottie, is that these I guess parts can be programmed, but then you're also saying, Rachel, it could just be these other parts of you that are projecting, and then you just have no conscious awareness of it, which I just find fascinating.
But when multiple people keep coming back and saying you were doing this, but you're in the bed,
and you got no memory of it.
So can I ask this question, Rachel? Is that's part of the departmentalization?
Yes.
When I had, because they didn't know that they were coming, but I know, I get ready when I go to bed to go on assignment. I ask to go on assignments. And when I come back, I am not tired. I am so wired and pumped. I just get so off, if I can use that word, on moving in the spirit. I just love it. I cannot get enough of it. And sometimes I will even wake up hovering over my body, and then I'll come back into my body, and my whole body's still vibrating. And sometimes my body will go, because I've just re-entered.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm like, yoo-hoo, that was so much fun.
I love that.
I'm weird, but I just love it.
Oh, be weird. Weird is wonderful. But that's fantastic, because maybe there's a part of being consciously aware and actually choosing to do it that means you don't come back exhausted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I even met someone that I saved years later in a situation in the physical.
Wow. Well, tell us that story, Dot. I don't think I've heard that. We've heard so many of your stories. I don't think I've heard that one.
I've got so many stories. I don't share all of them. But yeah, so one night the Spirit said to me, "Are you going on assignment?" And I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm ready for that." And he took me over to a country town. I actually can't remember the name of it.
Was this down in Victoria?
No, this I went overseas.
Oh, right.
To a foreign country, and everyone, the place was on fire, and they were being persecuted, and then this husband and wife and 2 children, and I helped them escape. And I even came back with flesh marks on my leg from where I scraped myself on a stone wall as I helped them escape.
Wow.
And her name was Yana. And I met her years later at a conference in Melbourne. And she came up to me, she says, "I know you." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know you." And then she turned around and she said, "My name's Yana." And it hit me like, I just went, oh my gosh, like I nearly got wiped out in the spirit because got hit again. I went, oh my gosh. And she was here in Australia where her and her family escaped. But my mission was to get them out of that town. After that, that was all, just to get them out of that town. And that's what I did. And yeah, I came back with scratch marks.
Wow.
And I woke up going, "Oh, I'm bleeding," like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Yay."
That's
really
wild.
Cool.
That was really cool. And going over countries in the spirit, doing that with groups of people and bringing transformation. I mean, the stuff that I've done over Australia, I haven't shared any of those stories. And where God's taken me, like I don't have to go in a plane. That's the best part.
Oh, I need to learn that. I need a holiday. That'd be good. Go on a holiday without a plane ticket. Yeah, that's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Okay, so this will kind of lead into dreams, because I know, Dottie, we've been to one of your workshops on dreams, and you talk about dreams as portals, which 100% makes sense to me, because I'm a super vivid dreamer. It was part of the reason when I did your psychic development course, Rachel, and just some of the things I learned, I was like, yeah, I feel like that's I'm not psychic in that I get visions and whatever, but dreams, like I actually have had a couple or maybe a few now, like prophetic dreams, like where I've dreamt something and then something's happened the next day, or I've dreamt of someone, like family members, and then I'll be telling my mum and she's like, oh yeah, this happened. And it like totally, like it's basically what I dreamt of. But I had no conscious knowledge of like what's happening in real life. And I'm like, I feel like that's my thing. Like that's my psychic gift, so to speak. But there's so much to learn because I'm fascinated by lucid dreaming. I've done it once spontaneously and never been able to do it again. And then, in terms of like the portals, and what you're saying, like essentially you could be going through a portal and like entering the astral realm without even knowing it. But then I also think there's this aspect of like the portal of like entering just your unconscious, because as we know, a lot of the stuff in the unconscious will come up in dreams. And I think that's part of it coming to our conscious awareness in a way. So I just want to hear like anything you've got to say on dreams and, you know, what they actually mean and how we can actually work with them in a way that does connect us to spirit. So whoever wants to go first.
Well, I'll just say a lot of people experience when they lose a loved one that the loved one will come and visit them in their dreams. And it's not a dream, it's a visitation. And it's usually one of the most comforting and amazing experiences and feels totally real. So if you ever lose
I've
somebody,
had that happen.
Watching, it's amazing.
Yeah,
I
I've
have
had
it
that happen.
with one of my sisters. She just turns up, and she turned up with her daughter, who's also passed, unfortunately, recently. And it was, you know, just and usually the question is, "Oh, Claire, what are you doing here? You're dead." And so I know it's like a lucid dream because I know she's not supposed to be there, and then we'll have a conversation. It's quite amazing. So. And a lot of my clients, obviously I work as a medium, a lot of my clients, we have these conversations where they say, well, you know, one of my first things is when someone's passed, have you dreamed about them yet? And then, you know, and then obviously, you know, they usually have, or if they haven't, we'll talk about, you know, timing and when it's likely to happen. But it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, I've had that happen. Actually, the only time was my grandfather, because he was... in 2019 when he passed, he was the closest person to me that I'd ever lost, and was probably a few months, maybe like 6 months after he passed, he came, and I woke up and I was so emotional, obviously, when I woke, because I was like, he came to see me. Like, it was really beautiful because it was like, I didn't, in the dream, well, it was interesting in the dream. So he that's my Serbian side of the family. I can't speak Serbian, but in the dream I was speaking to him fluently in Serbian.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And and he was an alcoholic, and I used to be a bartender, and in the dream I was a bartender, and he was standing at the bar with me drinking, and he was so happy because he was quite sick. He had stage 4 lung cancer when he passed, and he was quite unwell, and he'd kind of been a very tormented soul. You know, he'd had a lot of trauma, and he was an alcoholic his whole life. And in this dream he was just so happy. We were talking, and he was drinking his beer, just one little beer at the bar, and then he had to go, and I didn't want him to go. And I was saying to him, no, stay. And he said, no, I've got to go. And he was just so happy. And I woke up, and it's so comforting. And that was the first time that's ever happened. And I knew it wasn't just a dream. I was like, he definitely came to me.
Yeah. And animals do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Alexa, the dream that you had where you're seeing things that are current or future is actually you are having visions because you're foreseeing, or another word for it can be you're prophesying. So you're receiving things that are going to happen, which we all should be moving in that. I've had 2 incidences in the last 2 weeks where I've been driving in the car, and then I got shown that the tyre on this trailer was about to blow. I pulled my car back, and next minute the trailer car blew, and I was nowhere in the way of being hurt. And that happened a week ago. Then it happened again just 2 days ago. Jess and Joelle were in their van, and again the Spirit showed me the van tyre is going to blow. So I put my car, because I was in my car, they were in theirs, I put myself in a position that I protected them from traffic. I tried to ring Jess to let her know that the tyre was about to blow. She didn't answer. The tyre blew, and I could help guide them off the highway. So this is how we're meant to live and move.
Yeah.
But can I just ask, I want to share this story because I really want to ask Rachel's insight onto this. Now, have you heard of the courtrooms in the heavens, Rachel, where you can go into the courtrooms?
Yeah, I've seen similar.
Okay, so, and bring justice. So there was a pattern in my life that I'm like, okay, this has gone on for too long. I need to deal with this pattern. And I went into I set up basically, you know, going into a courtroom. God is the judge, and I'm presenting my case. Now, in the courtroom, the enemy or negativity can always come and present their right of why they can do what they do to you. Okay? And I'd love your feedback on this. But in that situation, I've presented, this is a pattern in my life, and I know it's connected with my mum. My mum had passed away, and I thought that I had dealt with all of this, okay? And anyway, I'm standing in the spirit, and God called my mum into the courtroom. Wow. And I was shocked. I was like, oh, Mum. And God made her apologize to me for how she treated me, and that I was a gift that she despised. And she had to apologize to me. It was the most profound encounter that blew me away. But I love the fact that I got justice because she had to apologize to me. And it was very, very powerful. And it's like that was, an encounter with obviously someone that had passed away. And I was like, wow, that to me was just really profound on God's behalf to do that for me. And it brought a big breakthrough to my life. Wow. So what have you experienced that? What are your thoughts on that? Like, because I went, right, I'm going into the courtroom, I'm getting this dealt with.
Which is a pretty healthy way to go about it. So can I ask, and I'm not saying you should, but were you able to forgive her at that point?
I had forgiven her. Yeah, a long time ago, but it was connected to a loop, a bit of a thought loop in my life that I was like, no, I've dealt with all of this. Why is this raising its head? And because that's what I do as well, and that's what I teach, is you've got to find the root issue or the legal ground on something to be reoccurring in your life. And that was the root issue. And it was Mum apologising to me for the way she treated me, but also not acknowledging that I was a gift given to her by God. She hated me. She despised me. She did not want me. And she made sure I knew it my entire life, even till the day she died. So that was when I felt that I had received justice. And it's important that we get justice. It's the same with what's happening globally. We can move the satanic and the negativity and all that things, but if we don't build a new earth that is based on justice, we will only repeat what we've already gone through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have no doubt that new earth will be created. I think that's, because the frequency is so high now, doesn't matter how much they pump in of the negativity, it's not really going to work. Yeah. I don't see I don't visualize a courtroom, but what I can say from this experience, my sister was used by my father in a lot of things, and she's dead now and probably murdered either by him or someone that he instructed to get rid of her. They're both in this just absolute black place, like it's just complete darkness and both completely alone. And as much as I try to keep releasing my sister, she keeps ending up back there. So there's some sort of justice thing that they have to actually accept forgiveness or accept that they can go into another realm. They can't move on without it. With my father, he needs to be forgiven by every single one of his victims, so he'll probably never get out of there. A lot of them are dead. And if those souls don't want to forgive him, he's stuffed. He's there forever. And I haven't tried to release him either because that's not my place. I've forgiven him because he was playing a role in this lifetime, and I'm aware of that. And I also came into this lifetime knowing it wasn't going to be great. It was going to be very hard. I didn't see everything that I went through, but I saw some of it before I came in, and I still put my hand up for it because I knew I'd be doing what I'm doing now, which is really, in my opinion, in my life, it's important.
Yeah.
So, not necessarily a physical courtroom as such, but this is the thing. It's like when you communicate with a spirit guide, they'll present to you the visual that works for you. Otherwise, you can't, recognise and feel that you can work with it. So you had a courtroom situation with me. It's just they're in complete darkness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I take people into courtroom sessions because whatever is on the earth is in the spirit realm. We have a court system, we have a justice system here on the earth. So it looks very similar in the spirit realm. And this is where if there's accusations, if there's a misjustice that the person needs to take responsibility for, that is where it happens. And what I mean, this is again some of the experiences is that I always stay in that state until I hear that not guilty verdict from the Spirit of God or from God, because until I hear that not guilty, then it hasn't been dealt with. And I've taken a lot of people into courtroom sessions that have got huge transformation and breakthrough and justice. Because we have to have justice. Even though we forgive, we still need justice.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Rachel, I just want to say I really honour you and acknowledge, and I see you for what you've been through and what you're carrying and where you're going, like what you're bringing to the earth right now. I really want you to know that. I really honour it and appreciate what you do. And I feel that's God's heart towards you as well, Rachel. You know, you are doing a profound work, and you are helping to enlighten and encourage people and make awareness of the spirit realm. My story is very different, but you know what you've gone through, what you've carried is just gold. You're gold.
Well, as a you, darling, as a you, Dottie, you're doing the same work. And Alexa and Isaac are doing the same. You know, we're all doing our part. It's a beautiful team.
Yeah.
I love being part of this team.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with what Dottie just said. And, you know, it's something that comes up quite a lot when we talk about, you know, this idea of soul contracts and, you know, agreements that we make when we come into this particular realm. And yeah, like, you know, quite often people will say, why would anyone ever choose to go through that, to experience the most horrific things? And I think, yes, that's totally understandable to even not be able to fathom why anyone would choose that, because that's what makes us human, is that we don't want those horrible things to happen to ourselves or anyone else. But I think when you can zoom out and really look at big picture, you know, step outside of this realm, it kind of makes sense. Because, you know, in your case, Rach, and even with you, Dottie, like we've all gone through the fire in some way, you know, in some way, shape or form. But for you in particular, Rachel, and, you know, you've kind of been to the absolute depths of, you know, darkness in the things that you've experienced. Like, if you hadn't gone through that. And I also think with you, Rachel, I always get this idea of like this, you know, like infiltrating and like changing it from the inside, because you were born into this bloodline family. What better way to sort of take it down is from the inside. And that's what I kind of think. It's like, would you be doing this work if you hadn't gone through that? But then on that, you know, on that sort of generational level, I think, you know, who knows how that's impacted that bloodline with you coming in and doing what you're doing.
Well, yeah, I know I've exposed a lot. I haven't exposed everything. I mean, my father wasn't the only perpetrator in my family. I've started speaking about some of the others, but not to any great extent, because they're very litigious. With my father, I had enough evidence to be able to do it while he was still alive, and also I think he wanted to be exposed because he called himself a whistleblower. It's quite, you know, he had many alters. He was obviously went through similar trauma as a child, because his grandfather was a very high up Mason. But yeah, I think the whole point to come into a physical lifetime is to learn and, you know, to transcend. You know, and some people do seem to come in for a holiday, but they're usually really new soul and they're just trying on humanity for the first time. So they might just have a really affluent, very easy, very happy life. And good luck to them, honestly. It looks lovely.
Can I say this? Anyone that goes through the things that we've gone through, we're leaving a spiritual legacy that others can build on. And that, I think that's the Freemasons want, you know, eternal life. So they've got their buildings with their names on it and their statues. But what we are leaving, it goes on for, thousands of generations. So we're leaving a spiritual legacy that cannot be stolen from. And that's worth more than anything that we have on this earth.
And that's such a good point, Dottie. When they put their names on those buildings and in their statues, that is a portal for them to come back here and to keep coming back in. That's
let's
like
put them down.
Yeah, absolutely. let's just
Yeah.
cook them down and bring down the buildings, or change the frequency completely and just rid the soul option of being able to use it as a
Yeah.
So I've got an adjacent question, because I had this experience recently. I'm not much of a dreamer. It might have something to do with the vaccines I got in the Army, but it seemed like my dreaming days stopped after my late teens.
Wow.
And but recently, I think it's partially because I'm next to Alexa at night, and I feel like I get like a boost. She's like a cell tower booster, like. But I had this really vivid dream, and normally I can't even see things, but this one I could actually feel. I feel like I could smell. I could feel like the humidity in the air. I could feel stuff touching my arms that were in the dream. And a friend of ours at the market, I told her the story, and she had another friend who's, just very gifted psychically from her whole life. And she brought up this other term. There's lucid dreaming, and then she said it was conscious dreaming. And she said there's a difference to it, and she reckons that I was actually there in these places. And I'll explain what it was. It seemed like multiple, you could call it dimensions, where it's almost like me in a totally different life scenario in all these different areas at the same time. Because it kind of flowed, and I feel like the visuals and the sensations I got were like a flicker just as I was waking up. But it was like at the same time, one of them, I was like, I had slipped into like an avatar body and was inside like an underwater vessel of sorts. And there was some weird like thing in my abdomen trying to get out. But I had this calmness about it where I realized like, this isn't actually my body. It's not going to hurt me. I'll be out of this shortly. And
brilliant.
Another one was very visuals. Like it was almost like the same climate as here, but it felt like it was more South American, sort of subtropic, or maybe even tropical. But there was things that weren't, it was real, but it was altered. It was like there was a tiger in the back of this pickup truck, but the tiger was bright, like green and with purple stripes, and like very real, like furry. And there was a cub, and then there was the mother tiger in the truck inside the cab of like an old red pickup truck. And I remember like I was getting bit by insects and I could feel it. So it was very real, and I haven't experienced anything, I don't think.
Yeah, well, it kind of lines up with some experiences I've had. So since that lucid dreaming experience, I've never been able to, it just happened spontaneously. This was years ago, before I even started learning about all this stuff, and before I'd become more spiritually awakened. But in the last like year or two, I kind of have, it's interesting because I'd only heard this conscious dreaming term when Isaac told me about it. Where I can have an awareness that I'm dreaming. I just can't control it though. So something weird will be happening in the dream, and I have this awareness of like, oh, it's just a dream. Like, so it's fine. I know I'm not in danger or anything, but then I just can't get to the point that I'm actually like lucid dreaming and can control it. So have you guys ever heard of this conscious dreaming versus lucid dreaming, and like the difference between the two?
Yeah. So I've experienced both. So I used to have lucid dreams a lot when I was a small child. And my first reaction was always, oh, I'm going to fly. But my flying was really weird. So I would not be flying and soaring. I would be doing this weird scissor thing with my legs, but above the ground.
Right.
I did that so many times in so many dreams as a child, where I was just doing this sort of, I wasn't touching the ground, but all around the streets around my home, which is really interesting. Now I'm thinking, I'm wondering if I was tracing actually the tunnel. Yeah, I was probably tracing the tunnel network, but anyway, really freaky. So I've had that many times, and I've also had experiences where it's just so real, and I've woken up thinking, and I think that's the conscious dreaming factor, where I thought, was I just in a past life? Because it's all happening at the same time. There's no time, so you can zip off into another lifetime. And Isaac, maybe that's possibly what you were experiencing. You were in the future in a lifetime or in the past in a lifetime, and you're actually having that experience, but you knew it wasn't now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. What about you?
Well, and the other thing I was going to say is, so the avatar body with the thing that was like coming out of my abdomen, I have this lymphatic bump. And actually when I woke up, and I feel like it's a fatty like nodule around a lymph node.
He has
Probably
a few.
after I'm thinking I started noticing these after I got
He
vaccinated.
has a few all over his body and a few in his arms, and that's my theory. Is like it makes sense if you're getting jabbed in the arm, it's probably all collected all these toxins into the lymph nodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 It was like in the same spot where I was like, oh, that could just be like a random thing in the body, and then I'm feeling it while I'm sleeping, and then I concoct this whole imaginary thing out of it. But I'm also like, I don't know, it's possible that if there is either, these past lives, future lives in that non-physical soup, you can actually tap into all that simultaneously, because it's like time is not linear, I don't think. Hard to explain and hard to tell, but I was like, it's almost like it just echoes, like it's something physically present here has a different version of the same thing in that life. And the same thing with people, because there's people in the dreams, like Dave Armstrong was in a couple of them. Okay. Similar, like kind of relationship, like we were friends, I was helping him out, and he was doing some totally different project, but and it was usually some weird, like, why would you do this kind of project? But I think there is something to that where you actually know these people as well in other lifetimes or other dimensions of sorts.
Yeah. We have a whole group of souls that we reincarnate with regularly.
Yeah, that totally resonates for me. Yeah, go ahead, Dot.
Okay, so I have a question. On what do you base reincarnation?
Oh, this was one of my topics I wanted to bring up, because I know you guys have very similar, very different perspectives on this.
So what do I base reincarnation on?
Yeah, why do you believe in reincarnation? What is your basis for that?
So what I see is that, well, generally people reincarnate back into the same family line. So you will be your great-grandfather or great-grandmother or great-aunt or whatever. It's the same soul family, and they just reincarnate into different sort of jobs or relationships into that family line. And I just see this over and over and over again with people. And for me, that's the explanation for little children that look at photographs and say, that was me, to their mother, when they've never met that person. And will tell them, crazy things about that individual's lifetime they couldn't possibly know, which could either be that they're in communication with the soul on the other side, or they actually were. And so I can work with clients to work out which it is for the little one. But I see that over and over and over again. But it's all, and quite often they'll have the same features, which can be genetic, but it can also be really uncanny. Wow, it's just like a remake of the same face or features. And we see this with these photographs of these celebrities who either they're vampires and they've lived for 1,000 years, or they are reincarnated from someone that they were looked identical to, in the past. And we can only sort of test that out because they're so famous and there's so many photographs floating around. So many people recognise their face now that they might notice them in one of these old photographs. We've probably all been in those old photographs before. So I don't necessarily believe it's linear, but it does seem to happen in a genetic DNA line.
Okay. So, well, this is first of all, the all the famous people, they're probably clones.
The possibility.
Or they've, done some DNA cloning to reproduce. There's a thought. But I've just never kind of sat with this reincarnation aspect, and I'll tell you why. And I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I feel that there are, we have generational genetic DNA that gets passed down, and I think we can get passed down generational spiritual aspects where there's blessings, but there can also be curses that are passed down. generationally, which again, scripture does talk about that. It's this is my point of view, is that I just could never come to the concept that God would have to reincarnate me because he's not capable of making something brand new. Like to me it's like we're recycling. I'm just like, I don't get that. It just doesn't sit with me. I'm sure he's more capable of, creating something completely brand new with a few little adds and pieces from generational things. And the other thing that I find really interesting, that people that talk about I'm reincarnated or reincarnation, they all come back as the Queen of Sheba. They all think they're the Queen of Sheba or some king or emperor. None of them come back and say, well, yeah, I was the dustman's son, or I was, a slave. They're always saying that there's something high and mighty, and I just go, don't get it.
Can I just add something to that? Yeah. Yeah.
I was a peasant in the south of France. So
my mum, I think, was a slave. Yeah, my mum, I think, did a past life regression and she was a slave at some point. And yeah, so can I just add to that though? Because the first time we had a conversation about this, Dottie, and you shared your perspective, I was like, yeah, we get that. I get where you're coming from, because I think we come from, God is infinite. We come from this infinite place, and I think there are infinite souls. But for me, I think it comes down to like what resonates for you, right? And so for me, I've had experiences where I'm like, I basically always grew up, my mum would always like joke that like I was her mother reincarnated. And we would like joke about it. But then I did a past life regression for the first time. And the first thing that came, so basically you go into like a state of hypnosis and then you enter a scene basically. And I'm describing this scene, and then as I go through her life, it wasn't until like ages through the thing I realized like it's my mum's mum, that this is what I'm experiencing. So I didn't know it at first. It wasn't like I was going in like, oh, I'm going to envision my mum's life, because she passed away before, like when my mum was young. So I never met my grandparents on that side. I've only ever seen some photos of her. And when I came home and told mum and I explained the scene that I came in, I was wearing a red dress. I was smoking a cigarette. There was a woman sitting, and I explained the scene. It was wallpaper on the walls, was really like very prominent. I'm explaining this scene. My mum goes, my mum was buried in a red dress. I didn't know that. I just got cold shivers. I didn't know that. And I went into this scene. The woman I described, she goes, oh yeah, that was mum's best friend, so-and-so. They were like inseparable. They were always together. And then the wallpaper, she said, yeah, we had wallpaper in this particular house. Because this scene was like a party. There was, people around and music and whatever. And she said, yeah, that house that we had all the parties in, we had wallpaper. I didn't know any of this stuff consciously. And so it really resonates for me. But also with what you're saying, Dot, for me, it's not necessarily about God, like God can't create more souls. I think because this is a free will realm that we're in. And I think it's the choice of the souls as well. Like when I did my reading with Rachel, she goes, you've gone through 5 cycles, like 26,000 year cycles, which she said most people go through about 3. And I'm like, that resonates for me, because I feel like I just keep choosing to come back here. So I think there's this element of free will and choice as to what the souls want to do. But then also there's always, and I don't know enough about this, but there could also be karmic ties as to why souls keep coming back or whatever. But what's your perspective, Rach? Because I asked you about this, like for someone that reincarnation doesn't resonate for them, how do you see that?
Well, it could be that they're just not going to come back, that this is the last time they're going to go through it, or that they only ever had to come in for one go. And that might be you, Dottie. You might not need to do this.
Well, I already say that. I'm going, there's no way I'm coming back and doing this again.
That was my attitude up until about 2 years ago.
I'm only
but I might come back, because I don't know. I think things are going to get a lot better. I'd like to have that, what I was saying before, the holiday life. I'd like to come back for one of those, because this one's been so hard. So I'll come back for one of those when things are sorted, which will be pretty soon. From a very early age, I could not understand why anybody would want to be here. And I would try to understand, and you'll never understand why a psychopath does the things that they do, because from a light point of view, you can never grasp it. It doesn't make any sense. But I saw that people go up in different, so they go up levels. So from being an aura reader from a very early age, I noticed that people with certain frequencies were nice and other frequencies were not. And I gleaned from that, especially from the upgrades that I've seen over the last 10, 11 years, souls come in my opinion, to have choices over successive lifetimes to decide whether or not they're going to be light or dark. And that's just the way that I see it, because that's comforting to me. It makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to everybody.
Yeah, well, what you say about someone potentially coming in, this is their first incarnation, that makes a lot of sense, where like reincarnation wouldn't resonate for them. And that's also what I find so fascinating. And that's, one of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation, especially like on something like this, where I know you guys have different perspectives, is that because for different people, different things are going to resonate. And I'm sure there's many other people that reincarnation doesn't resonate for them. And I think that you can't deny their experience just because yours is different. And I think we know what we know, even if just about our own soul journey, is so tiny, like a drop in the ocean, what we know in this lifetime. I think it's not until we sort of move out of this physical realm that we open up to more. And obviously I think as we upgrade in our frequencies, I think the veil becomes, thinner and thinner, where we can access more. But yeah, I find it super fascinating. And that's why I love talking to different people about these kinds of things, because you always learn something different depending on who you're talking to, even if they, like for you guys, I came to sort of both of you in learning about the ley lines and the portals, and pretty much everything you guys teach is the exact same. And you didn't know each other, you've learned in different ways, but it's the same thing. And that to me resonates as truth, but there's always something different like that you learn from each individual person. A question just popped in too about frequency and upgrading. So I've been thinking about this lately. Is it possible for people to downgrade in frequency, or would you say, like, for example, I'll share an example. So we know someone, we were quite good friends with them, and, really doing amazing work and all this stuff. But then they got a partner, and this partner, we all noticed this person change when the partner came along. And I know that they were of quite a high frequency. And I've always wondered, like, would they then downgrade in frequency, or would they stay where they are if they're just kind of getting sidetracked in, maybe what they're here to do? Like, have you ever seen people go down?
Regress.
Yeah.
I think people can regress because they stop moving in what they carry. And often some people will compensate to be at the level of the person that they've partnered with, so that they don't feel intimidated or insecure, or that person will try and squash the other person to bring them down to their level, rather than wanting to rise up to that other person's level and continue to grow. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And this is where we're seeing a lot of people breaking away in relationships, because one person is wanting to grow and is going for it, and the other person's going, nah, not playing the game. And the divide is getting too big.
Yeah.
And because it's very hard to deny the growth that you're hungry for in the spirit. You can only deny it for so long, because it will keep pulling, God will keep pulling you to come back into your true design, your true blueprint and relationship with him, because that's what he's always in momentum with, growing us, calling us higher, to come deeper, and more people are hungry for it. That's why we're having these conversations. I have spent so many years completely on my own with the stuff that I've experienced and known. And now I get to talk about it, and I'm going, everyone's talking about it now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, totally. And what about you, Rachel? Like, have you ever, I imagine the people you're reading for aren't regressing, but do you see that in people's, or have you ever seen that in people's auras? Like, because I also think too, like in terms of like when we talk about, like you've talked about these, people in these satanic sort of cults and things, they actually don't like the auras very close to the body. And I feel like that's always a choice, right? Like, obviously, yes, you can be born into a bloodline family and all these things, but anyone at any time can go, oh, I'm choosing to do this now, and go really dark. And I imagine then, yeah, you probably would regress. But do you... Yeah. So, but do you see that in people where they just kind of get sidetracked with certain people in their life where they'll regress, or do they just tend to sort of stay where they are until they get back on track?
Well, one thing I see regularly is in clients or friends where they'll get close to like a gold or higher frequency, and usually that's where a relationship will end because the other person's not growing, which is very sad. And this is a thing when you were mentioning before, Isaac, that you feel like you get energized by Alexa, which is absolutely beautiful when you sleep next to each other. So when you sleep next to somebody, obviously you're going to be within their auric space, because the aura's at least 1 meter around the body, usually 2 to 3. The higher the frequency, the wider it is. And when you've got two souls next to each other for long periods of time, a homeostasis occurs where one person will get slightly depleted, the other person will be energized. Usually the other person can't sleep very well because they're so energized. So you're doing something right, guys, because you both look very well. So people can get brought down by, if they've got there's a huge disparity, and there's not a huge disparity between the two of you, but if there's a huge disparity of energy frequencies, then one person will get absolutely drained. You also see this with people who are trying to do their work, they're trying to grow spiritually, and they live with somebody and sleep next to somebody who is substance abusing really badly. Because the substance abuser, it's not an invitation as such, but attachments love substance abusers. So dark souls love to jump in, and then they feed off the other person when they're in the auric space during the night. And that's horrible. So those who have full-on sleep paralysis experiences when they're sleeping next to a partner who substance abuses, try sleeping apart for a while and see if that helps the issue, because it's usually the entity attached to the other person that's actually coming in to do the work. But for the most part, I see people getting stuck and not evolving. Most of the people I read for are not dark. They would not come to me for that reason. But I know that souls can devolve, but they've got to do something pretty awful. Pretty bad. Yeah. That has to be a choice. Also, with these bloodline families or people who are abused from a very early age, there's a thing called chronic reversed polarity, where the abuser will deliberately cause a horrific shock to the vagus nerve from the bottom end, so attacking the base chakra, and it can actually force the base chakra and the crown chakra to flip, so that you've got the crown chakra at the top, the base chakra at the top, crown chakra at the bottom. That means that person's driven by base desires, driven by power, driven by sex, and usually by money, and none of it's spiritual. It's all mine. They're the ones that have often a red aura, but it's not really what they're supposed to be, and that can be fixed. It's pretty amazing, everything, and those people usually have chronic health problems.
It makes so much sense when you're talking about, in relation to these people that are born into the bloodline families that are, have been through a lot of what you've been through, Rachel, and are groomed for certain roles. Like, I really do believe that this is what a lot of our politicians are, people in entertainment, the entertainment industry. I think a lot of them are groomed for these roles. And it makes so much sense, especially in like the political world, the world leaders. I actually hate calling them that because they're not leaders at all. They're placed in those positions. But it makes sense because you see that drive for power, that all-consuming, where it's not benevolent. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Did you have something to say, Dot?
No, I was just processing what you were saying and going, okay, that what Rachel just said about the reverse of the chakras was really interesting, because I don't really go into the chakras. I haven't really studied that in the sense of it's either an entity or it's a trauma, something's happened to them. So they're the things that I'm looking for, but that was a very interesting way of saying that, because, someone that is into addiction would be, there's a trauma in their life and the addiction is compensating for the trauma. They're looking for, to feel safe or feel like they belong, so they do drugs to compensate. It gives them that false sense of, I belong and I'm important or whatever. I've never really looked at it the way you just said that, but that was an interesting insight. And then I'm always looking for the entities that are attached, which was one of your questions, actually. I think, Alexa, was, entity attachments and what we thought about them and how they worked. Because I've got all your answers printed out here.
Dotti came prepared. Yeah, I mean, look, we always love talking about that just because we both think it's such a fascinating topic. And especially because when you come to the awareness of that being at play, you see it play out in people. Like, it's really, really, I find it very interesting, and all the different ways that these entities can come in. But essentially, like any form of trauma, addiction, like substances that are, because the substances, the way I see them is like, they're just lowering that, like you said, Rachel, like the, your auric field, your energy field, the stronger it is, the wider it's going to be. Like substances, generally, the way I sort of envision it is like it brings that in and in and in, where it's like, and I think, not sure if I learned this from one of you guys, but someone talks about, like, you usually see in addicts and stuff, like their auric field is probably only about 1 meter out, or as close as 4 feet out. Is that less than 1 meter, or is that about 1 meter?
That's a little over 1 meter.
Okay, yeah. And it's very close to the body. So it makes sense that you're less protected in that way, where they can come in. And then, of course, if there's trauma, fear, anger, like there's all these negative emotions that's kind of like they're in, right? So anything you want to say on entity attachment, we're here for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the way the world, unfortunately, is run. So your politicians, I'm not saying every single one of them is evil, because I've had help from some, but the majority are puppeted. They're controlled. So they've had some sort of attachment, something's come in, or they're controlled, or they're substance abusing, and so that they're very easily controlled. And a lot of them probably get auditory information. So in my opinion, I shut down my clairaudience in childhood because I was used to communicate with demonic entities as a child in rituals. Demonic entities can communicate very, very clearly through the auditory channels. It doesn't mean that everybody who's clairaudient is speaking to someone evil either. It doesn't mean that at all. I just chose to shut it down because I didn't like it. But when you've got something that can spoon feed with language, then these people are very easy to control, and they get something out of the situation. So they get to sleep at night, and this entity is not going to drive them crazy by scratching at the headboard, sort of thing. They don't get much out of it. I still do not understand why they give up so much to call these entities in, except to say that Masons above them or people above them tell them that they'll get all of these things that they never really get anyway. What's the point of power and fame if you can't sleep at night? If you've got something terrifying that's always waiting for you around the corner, I just don't get it. But yeah, these attachments, this is what's happening with this, what I was describing before as what might be called the rapture. Those entities that would normally stick around here on Earth because they can't move forward and they don't want to anyway, the hellish realms are predatory, and so these entities don't want to go there. They're dark. So they stick around here and they bother people. They harass, they call it schizophrenia. It's not a real diagnosis, it's absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
Jerry Marzinski speaks about this, and I really recommend people go to his website, jerrymarzinski.com. You can get the Marzinski protocols if you know of anybody who's going through schizophrenia.
Well, we had Jerry Marzinski on, and just fascinating, his work. Yeah.
He's an amazing man. But he said at one point that one of these entities expressed through one of his penitentiary clients that Jerry had no right to interfere with their way of life. And they believe that they have a right to be here. And all these idiot Freemasons have made it possible for them to stay because they've inverted the frequencies of the ley lines, taken these beautiful serpentine energy lines, earth energy lines that meander through the landscape, turn them into these straight alignments because they've got to control everything. It's got to be power and control. And that is being reversed. So these entities, these attachments, I don't think we're going to have much of this too much into the future. Give us another 10, 20 years, there is not going to be attachments. That's the way I'm looking at it, and that's why my downloads are saying. But in the meantime, we need to know how to deal with them. And so people don't realise your intent is your most powerful tool.
Yeah.
To get rid of these entities. So you could use the protocols, Marzinski's protocols, or you could learn from somebody else. But my concern is people think that they have to go and get a shaman to fix it each time. And that's not necessary. You just need to learn how to protect yourself. Children should be learning from a very early age how to energetically protect themselves so that they don't have those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that the skin absorbs anything it comes into contact with, and unfortunately, many well-known skincare brands laden their products with potentially harmful ingredients, most of which you can't even pronounce. Natural Art Form is different.
If you're sick of reading long ingredient lists and still having no idea what you're actually putting on your skin and whether it's good for you, then Regenerate Advanced Skin Repair Lotion is here to take out all of the guesswork.
Regenerate combines simple yet powerful organic herbal remedies like calendula, comfrey, and aloe vera with DMSO for visible skin rejuvenation that feels as good as it sounds.
Regenerate is designed to stimulate natural collagen production, boost skin resilience, and soothe damaged, irritated skin, delivering results that even $300 skin products can't provide.
To make the switch to a body care brand that values your health as much as you do, head to naturalartform.com, where you can get 10% off as a Natural AF listener using code NaturalAF10 at checkout. Thank you for supporting the show. Now back to the episode.
I think the most important thing that's happening now is that people realize the power that they carry within. And because we have been, disempowered, and that's the enemy's tactic, because he has no right here and he has no real power. It's only what people give him, or the Freemasons have set up to give him. And that's where if more and more voices come out and empower people to clean up their lives, take responsibility. I'm not a victim. It's not someone else's job to do everything for me. Then we could shift everything so much quicker. And this is my passion, is like, come on guys, like shake the bullshit off, break the spell, and let's rise up, stand up in who God created us to be, the power that we all carry, the very God DNA that's within us, and shift this stuff. Don't accept it anymore. We don't consent. We don't agree.
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
I've got on my little pad wagon.
That's good. No,
what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say, like, and this isn't to excuse anything, but it's like a big misunderstanding, and it's kind of, there's a little bit of comedy with that. But I spent a few days in jail one time, and one of the guys that was in jail, he had been crash banged by the ATF, like a SWAT team, and arrested him, and did the whole, it looks like some movie, blew up his door and took him out. And he was all, was telling his story about, because he was like running guns and all this serious stuff. And he asked me, like, what are you in here for? And I was like, it's a big misunderstanding.
That's what they all say.
He just started cracking up. It's like a misunderstanding. But it was just like I understood, like, yeah, like there was trouble. It was a domestic situation, but there was no violence. There was no injured parties. It was over a phone call that was cut off. But the charges were all dropped. I was let out, but it was like, I knew that it was a misunderstanding, and I had no fear. I was actually having a great time, and I was doing potentially some spiritual good in there, because there was a guy, my cellmate was a drug abuser who was on meth, but like injecting meth, which I didn't even know they would inject meth like heroin. And this guy in my cell had come off of that and like scared his former cellmate half to death by like freaking out and like pounding into the wall and like just going ballistic. And I'm in there like teaching him some of these things, talking about childhood traumas and some gentle ways to kind of move the energy with breath work and things like that. But anyways, wow. Just knowing that it's a misunderstanding, that there's information that people have, or that you may have, that the rest of the world hasn't caught up to. I want to say that about the way that, one, the dark forces that rule the world and how the politicians are. I feel like a lot of times people say that, like, the controllers, so to speak, they have all the hidden history, they know everything, and they're all like in control. And it really kind of puts them up on a pedestal. And I think there's a very strong possibility, because I know, and in say like science, for instance, there's things that have been accepted as doctrine that were literally either a joke, weren't true, and the person saying it knew that. Like Schrodinger's cat, for instance. just as an example, how people can think they understand something and repeat it as if it's true. The whole idea that Schrodinger's cat, where they had a cat, they poisoned it, put it in a box, and then you don't know if it's alive or dead until you open the box. And it's this whole thing, the quantum physics, people use that a lot. Schrodinger was being sarcastic. He was like, this is so stupid. I'm going to make a really dumb example. And I don't even know if they actually did it. Maybe somebody actually did the dead cat experiment, but it was just a mental exercise. And he was just being ridiculous to make a point. It's literally been taught as if it's quantum physics and you don't know and you can't know. I think a lot of this stuff with even some of the high Freemasons that actually even interact with these demons and stuff, they believe a totally different script and narrative. They have a very big misunderstanding as to what they get out of it, what the end result's going to be. Like they're under some massive delusion because they think they're getting power from it, whereas they're I guess you could say they're being ridden like a donkey, you know, they're just being driven 100%. Where they want. Yeah.
100%. And as they get higher and higher and higher, they need to recruit more and more to feed the demon that wants to feed off them. And that's all it is. It's absolutely ridiculous and sad.
And that's the massive deception, right? Is that they, like, the power that they get, it's worldly power. Like, that's very limited, as like the power that we already have, which they don't have access to when they give over their souls. So like they sell their souls, so to speak. That's kind of the deception. And I think that's what we're seeing, though, because you can see when you know this stuff, you can see why the world has been so conditioned to value that stuff, because then they can stay in that frequency and yield all this power in this world. But now that we can see this mass awakening is happening, you can see it's like falling away more and more and more. And then once they lose this worldly power here, they've literally got nothing.
That's right.
They're so jealous. They're so jealous of us because we have love. We have natural highs. You know, they don't have any of that.
Yeah. But not only that, Rachel, it's we're redeemable. Lucifer is not redeemable. His judgment has already been passed. He's done and dusted. So he's still trying to access heaven through us, or God through us. And that's where he'll never enter it. That's why there's the sacrifices and the blood offerings and everything that you're more aware of than I am. But that is where he's trying to gain power, but he will never reach it. He's already got signed, sealed, and delivered judgment. And that goes back to when we realize that he is nothing. He has no power except what we give him through our consent or agreement, and turn around and go, no, we've won the battle. It's already done and dusted. And that's the awareness that people need to come into. We don't have to play his game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and with the entity attachment, that's what I was going to share, is my personal experience, and this is what I think happens. And look, and I think it's also kind of a rite of passage. Like, you kind of have to go through your own experiences. And I think a lot of the time, in my case, when you learn about this entity attachment stuff, and again, we're conditioned this way. What we see in horror movies and the way it's depicted in film and stuff is that it's scary and these things are going to attack you and you're powerless to them. And I had a fear, like when I was learning about this stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I've got entity attachment, especially just because I had so many years of like drugs and alcohol and sort of, you know, abusing that to some degree. And I thought I've definitely got like some attachments. And at first I was kind of fearful of them, like just in the sense that I didn't think, like I felt like I needed to, and I did actually see someone the first time to do like a clearing kind of thing. And then I started learning, and then that's kind of when we met you, Dottie, and I learned a lot more from you, and then I did your course, Rachel, and that's when I realized, I was like, oh, we have the power to clear things whenever we feel anything. Like, even if I just get an inkling that there's something, I just do, like now I actually do your thing, Dottie. I love that, the click. And that I've even done it before, like I was falling asleep and I just got this weird, like I could just feel something. And I was like falling asleep and I was like, I'm not going to get up now and do the whole thing. So just in my mind, I heard the click, I made it click and I said just something about be gone, like, and just, so it is, it's done, whatever. Literally felt it go away. And even just that. And I think it's really important for people to experiment with what works with them. But what are some of the practical things, Rachel, that you teach, like some of the different ways you can clear these things? And then we can move to you, Dotti, and what you do.
Well, I love that you gave that example, because when you're confident, you can do it that easily.
Yeah.
And it's that, again, it's just harnessing your intent because you're not giving consent.
Yeah.
Something very simple that people can do is get a tuning fork and tap it. I've got one here. Just tap it and run it around your head, run it under each foot, run it around your back. Particularly pay attention to this part of the back because they like to come in there because you can't see them, and they like to attack psychics, so they don't want to come in from the front because you might pick up on it, but come in from the back. So a lot of people that have thoracic back pain, that can be a sign. It can be other things as well, but it can be a sign of an attachment. So 432 hertz tuning fork, to do that on a daily basis or when you feel you need it. Don't do it all day long. That's OCD and that's not healthy. That's actually inviting something in. Once a day is what I do. I do that so I make sure when I'm going to sit down and do readings for people, I'm clean and clear. Yeah. So I don't have to worry about any of that. And then I'll do a prayer of intent and a visualization of protection. So those are things you use as well. So you might say to yourself, I'm protected from all negative entities. Done. It is that simple. For sleep paralysis, because it's such a scary thing, I recommend that people actually visualize the entity, whether they can see it or not. If they're paralyzed and they can feel it, imagine what it might look like and then pixelate it into gold dust or diamond dust, into some sort of light particle that it just breaks up into nothing. And it's a soul death. So what you're doing is you're sending it back to source and have that intent back to source to be dealt with. That soul will never be 100% that soul again. It goes back into the source field, and that will only particles of that will be in many different souls then. Never be the same consciousness. They don't like that.
Yeah,
and usually
can imagine.
That'll stop it. They might try one more time, another entity might try it again. It's done. So that is a very effective way to get rid of, the more intense stuff. But just on a daily basis, just clearing your field. I love the clicking. That's fabulous. That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Learn that from you, Dotti. And we'd done something and you do it. But then I remember you saying, is it something about the click or the noise?
Well, for the podcast listeners, they're actually snapping their fingers. So you're snapping, right?
Click.
Yeah.
Clicking your fingers.
Well, we say snapping.
Oh, we have to always say it in Australian and in American.
You guys call it clicking? Really?
Yeah, we call it clicking your fingers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
It's weird, isn't it? Different continents.
You'd think we all speak English, but we really don't.
Yeah, so that was something when I, started out doing deliverance and healing and stuff like that. It's something the Spirit led me to do. He just said, I want you to click your fingers. And so it brings a real finalization, but often when I do it, the entity then disattaches. If I'm dealing with bigger things, I'll slap my hand as well. If I need bigger impact, so to speak. So they're things that I've been led by the Spirit. I was never taught to do that by anybody. It's all purely led by the Spirit. And so I find I've learned actually just in the last couple of years that scientifically a click of the fingers or a slap actually disengages it from your mindset.
Interesting.
Which I was like, oh, well, there you go. I'm scientific as well. So
it's like a pattern interrupt. Yeah.
It's an interruption. So but that's what I use. There's other things that I use as well. But very interesting, Rachel, that you talked about the back. Because there's things that I do when I'm cutting generational curses or entities or patterns. I'm always led by this. So I'm learning stuff here that, I've been told to do by the Spirit, but this is the why. And that is, I deal with the back so that breaks. what I see in the spirit, it's like a bungee rope that goes and the bungee rope, if you imagine, it pulls them back. Every time they step forward, the bungee rope pulls them back into that pattern. So I'm cutting the bungee rope, or I'm dealing with soul ties or sexual soul ties or entities. So it's always different, but they're the things that the Spirit has taught me to do. And even dealing with departmentalization, God will show me in the brain where the part is or where the entity is, where the blockage is. So it's all, to me, it's fascinating. And I love learning new things all the time. As far as what do I do? As far as protection, going back to that question, Alexa, is that I'll put a dome of protection over me, so that I know, depending on the circumstance, but 90% of the time I know that I am fully protected. I know that I have angels that are with me 24/7 because I've seen them, and sometimes I'll have more than two. Normally I have two, but depending on the assignment or what I'm about to step into will determine how many I have with me. So often I will see the amount of angels that are with me, or the army that's with me in the spirit, to then go, oh, okay, we're about to do some heavy work here, because they show up before I get the assignment. Yeah. And can I share a story about that?
Absolutely.
I was living in a house by myself, and I was spending a lot of time, just 24/7 in the spirit and creating this beautiful heavenly atmosphere in my home with no one interrupting it. And I came home from work and I walked into the house, and the house was full of angels. It was absolutely chockers. And I kind of walked in and went, oh, okay, I'll just walk back out, because I was a bit, wow. And I can see them like I can see you guys right now. Yeah. And they just looked up at me, and I'm like, okay. I kind of walked back out to the front door and then went, no, go back in. And I was like, okay, guys, what's happening? What are you doing here? And they took my house over as head office. And I had for weeks angels flying in and flying out and getting assignments. Wow. And when I walked in, the place was full. There was thousands of them. And I kind of went, okay, guys, happy to have you here, but there's a deal. None of you are to come into my bathroom.
You need a bit of privacy.
I'm like, that's the realm, right? That's the limits here. You can go everywhere else, but you're not coming in the bathroom. And they were like, yeah, no worries. And that went on for weeks. And then as the weeks went on, there was less and less of them. But I saw them coming in and being given scrolls because they were going out on assignment. And wow. And then after about 3 or 4 weeks, and look, I'd even say, do you want a cup of tea, guys? Like, you're hungry. That's how comfortable and how at home we all were. And then they said, okay, we're finished now. And we've done what we needed to do in the area, because I do a lot of work geographically as well in the area. And they were all fulfilling the things that God asked me to partner him with. And wow. That's just fun, isn't it? It's just fun.
Well, I love that you brought that up, Dotti, because I think that's another thing that people either don't have any awareness of, or they disregard, or they forget about. It's front of mind for me always, ever since I had my reading with Rachel. She said, you've got 150 guides. I was like, God, I really need all the help I can get in this life, don't I? But I know that, like, that's what you said in my reading, Rachel, was like, you can call on them anytime you need support or assistance. And I think that's so very powerful. And even I did some Reiki training with a very dear friend of ours a year or two ago. And that's actually part of the way she teaches. So before you put hands on, you actually sort of, set intention and call in protection and call in any benevolent beings that need to be there or want to be there to support. And it's pretty incredible, some of the we're in a training of a group of us, and some of the things that people felt or saw in terms of like the beings that came in. And that's another really powerful way that people can stay protected, especially in those earlier stages of when you are kind of figuring out that stuff. Because like what you said, Rach, about having the confidence, like that's taken me a while to get to that place. And it's been a learning about trying different things and what works, and then really cultivating that inner power, that you're talking about, Dottie, in a lot of this is like cultivating that inner power within to a point that you do get to a point, Dot, where you just know that you're protected. You just have that, like you say, that direct line with God, the creator, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And you just know. It's just a knowing.
Yeah. And this is the difference, in having a real relationship with God and moving in the Spirit and everything that it has to offer, to those that can quote scripture, but they're just words on a page. And when situations come, they're like, quick, give me, I need a Bible. Like, what scripture can I read? And they're in this panic, fear mode, which the enemy loves, because he's laughing at them going, you don't know who you are. You have no authority. Like, whatever you say, it's like, whatever. And that is the difference. We need to become spiritually mature. This is the moving right now. This is the deep stirring, and I'm sure Rachel would agree with me that we are being called to a higher place of awareness, of moving in all the gifts of the Spirit that is available to all of us. It's not for the elite. It's not for the frozen chosen. We are all created with it. It's time now to step into the truth of it and the power and the authority in it, because then we can move mountains.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you set your intent to as well. So it's that knowing you're protected, and also making sure that you don't catastrophize and focus on the negative, because as you get more and more powerful and go up levels, what you focus on you can create.
Yeah.
So these are two very basic things that everybody needs to learn, or could benefit from learning. We can energetically protect ourselves with our intent, and we need to focus on what we want to create, not what we're frightened of. But we grow up in a society that's, you're going to be frightened of this and that, and let's just constantly, activate the amygdala so that you're in that fight or flight.
Yep.
And that's the absolute antithesis of what we should be doing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to underline what you just said, because you said the exact same thing. You told me that in the reading I did with you, Rachel. And I would say by and large, I don't catastrophize, but I was thinking about that. I was like, but do I let maybe the doubts, or maybe like the doubts, I let them be disguised as like being rational or reasonable or whatever. But I had this experience sort of like in the manifesting realm, but it was just real simple little lessons of like, like you have a problem, you can voice it, but if you're hanging on to like the fear, or if you feel it in your body longer than like a brief, 30 seconds or however long it takes to let an emotion pass through you, and be very conscious of the thoughts that keep coming up, because you're right, you can manifest things, and especially the things that you are resisting. It's like you almost give energy to them, and I can see that, I guess, because of whatever soul frequency I'm at now. This past weekend, I was having a pretty good run. I set my intention for the day for the markets, and it's just like a matter of like, all right, I'm going to set a dollar amount, and then I had another really good day. It was like another record day at the market, but I've been kind of observing that, where I'm like, all right, I don't want to make my whole life around money, but I do have this feeling of like, we need to get better at attracting it or vibrating in the sense, however you want to say it, of becoming more abundant. And part of it, I think, lends itself to this desire to be kind of free from the 9-to-5 rat race type stuff. I think a lot of people trap themselves mentally in that thing. And this whole realm, I think, is kind of, it's become apparent that that's the norm all over the world, in every country just about. And to be aware of that was a system set up for us to hold us in a certain place. In some regards, I feel like it gave an opportunity to lift people out of some poverty, but that was all a mindset. Because I look around at this, you can take a, what do you guys call them here? A bell pepper? Capsicums. You can take one of those and it's got all these seeds in it. You can plant them, they grow out of the ground, and then you have this never ending cycle of stuff. And you can take that and sell it at the farmer's market. And you can do that with pretty much every fruit and vegetable that are out there, and trees and all this stuff. Like, this stuff just grows in an abundance. And that's only one way of generating an income or wealth or feeding yourself and your family. But how do people go about not just like the really bad stuff like catastrophizing, but as far as like getting unlocked out of these systems that have been put here to hold us, like the monetary system? How do y'all kind of view that? Like, money's important. You know, Zig Ziglar says it's right up there with oxygen. You know, it's not all that life is about, but it's pretty important. How do you go about dealing with that and the fear traps around not having enough money? And is that all an illusion, or is there something important to be considered there?
Yeah, and let me just tack on just to that point, because this kind of feeds into a few sort of spiritual misconceptions that I'd love to get both your perspectives on. And one of those is money, because you kind of get two ends of the spectrum. In a lot of religious circles and like super, super new agey, actually, New Age is probably the other end, but a lot of like religious circles are like, it's almost like a virtue to be poor. Like, you can't ask for anything, and like, you know, you just give everything to God. Well, it's usually giving everything to the church, not to God. And it's almost like a virtue to stay poor and not ask for much and whatever. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, where that's probably more the New Age, where you can manifest anything you want, but then it becomes this obsession where people are just like, they just want to manifest all this physical stuff that doesn't actually mean anything. And they're probably doing it in quite an unethical way. So yeah, I want to throw that in the mix, like just to tack onto Isaac's question and like kind of what you see in these, because the way I see it, the true spiritual manifestation of that in terms of money specifically is that it can just be another form of abundance where you don't have to struggle. You can get rewarded for the work that you do, you know, and that's not the focal point, but it's almost like that's what the universe gives you back when you put in the right intention into like whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. So if it's all right with Dottie, I'll go first. So my suggestion is do what you love, because when you do what you love, it creates this cycle of you're happy, and so you're bringing in what you need because you're happy and you feel full of joy and you feel purpose and you feel like you're doing something useful. And even if the money doesn't flow straight away, it will, because you're creating this cycle. Those who just manifest for the sake of manifesting are completely missing the point, because quite often they'll be doing it in a way that doesn't give them any joy anyway. But they'll have the house and the car and whatever else that, you know, the handbag, partner, whatever it is that they want, but they won't have joy. So whatever makes you want to spring out of the bed in the morning and do, as long as it doesn't harm anybody else, that's what you should be doing. That's your soul purpose. That's what you came here to do. And that can change as you evolve. You can change, but that usually does bring in the abundance. It'll certainly bring you up to those soul frequencies that bring the abundance in as well. You get to certain levels where the abundance just flows and you don't struggle anymore, unless there's a really important lesson in you struggling for some reason. You know, you can be hungry, otherwise if you get too comfortable and complacent, you won't keep growing. But that's my suggestion, and I really, really recommend people in government positions really consider finding something that they can do for themselves pretty soon, because those government positions are just going to get wiped out pretty soon. And I don't say that to worry people. You've probably got a few years, but you want to be thinking about that now to set yourself up, because if everybody loses their job at the same time, you know, we've seen all these rollouts with all these things they're doing in America where the government people aren't getting paid. They're trying to do that all over the world. So it's so important now to go into something that you love.
Oh, and especially with the rise of AI, like they're going to be the first jobs to go is all those government jobs that are like almost unnecessary to start with. And then now with AI and the way we're going with technology, like you can see it happening. So yeah, it's definitely not a stretch to say that. And actually, as you were saying that too, Rach, I was just thinking, is that something you've worked with in terms of clearing generational stuff? Because I think that's a big one too, is like this money, poverty, lack, scarcity mindset. I think that's definitely something that gets passed down through the generational lines as well.
Well, first of all, we've got to look at the fact that this whole poverty mentality has been ingrained in us for generations. This is exactly the church's purpose or religion's purpose. It's like, you know, poverty is next to godliness. So, you know, you give everything to the church. Meanwhile, the popes and the priests have got their gold and their castles and their palaces, and, you know, and so it's a complete hypocrisy to the max. And we still see that in religion today, because even in these modern churches, we see, you know, the pastors in their $1 million homes and, you know, give to the church because God will prosper you, is the biggest scam you could possibly have listened to. And meanwhile, you've got single mums that can't even pay their rent, but they're giving to the church on this false deceptive promise that God is going to prosper you. Okay? And what needs to shift is that globally, we need to come to the understanding that I'm important. Me and my family are important, and they should always come first to the goods that you have, you know, the money that you bring in. You give out of your abundance. If you haven't got abundance, whether it's spiritually or physically, you can't give. So, and the other mentality that we have is that for those that give, what Rachel was saying about, you know, do what you love, okay? Well, I love talking about the things of the Spirit. I love helping people get breakthrough. But people are not prepared to put their hand in their pocket to value that, because it hasn't got much value in the society that we live in. They think it all should all be for free, right? So there's that concept that's going on in the world as well. It's like, well, you know, God gave it to you, so you should give it for free. And it's like, hang on, I've spent my life doing this, learning and you know, sharpening my skills. So why does that not have value? Because we haven't been taught that it has value. I've seen people pay thousands of dollars for a crystal and be okay with it, but not want to give once they actually get a breakthrough. And that is because we've been taught by the things of this world what has value and what hasn't. And when we need to come into a place where we see the value that people bring and not material things. That's the shift. You know, personally, I've had seasons in my life where I've had super abundance, you know, and God pour out. But I've also learned how to go without very much as well. And that's okay, because my life is not wrapped up in material things. And I know that I will always have enough, because God's promise is that I will always be taken care of. And that's what I hang my hat on. Doesn't matter how it comes, whether I have to go and work for a couple of weeks or whether I, you know, have to do something for someone else or whatever it looks like, I know that I always have abundance.
Yeah, that's such an important point to make too, especially about what you know, generally people value in society. And I think the tide is starting to turn, but I think what's also happened is, because we're kind of coming out of this era of like the gurus and the false idols, a lot of people have spent a lot of money on people that aren't legit. you know, that they can market themselves and they can talk themselves up, but they don't walk the walk. And unfortunately, a lot of people have been burned by that. And I think we're kind of moving out of that era. People are a little bit more skeptical as well about who they work with in those sorts of realms. But yeah, what you said about in terms of like abundance is a mindset more than anything. And like we've gone through times like when Isaac first moved, like the first sort of year or 2, year and a half after he moved here, like we went through some really tough times. Like we had to relaunch the business. Like I had left my job about 6 months before he moved here. I had left my 9-to-5 job and was starting to go out on my own. So there were times when we were just like, we didn't know, like we had no food, but no money. Sorry. Like we didn't know how we were going to put food on the table some weeks. But by the grace of God, we have never gone without. Like sometimes we've literally just said, like, I'll never forget this one time. We literally had maybe like $200 for the whole week for everything. And we just had people come and drop off like bags of food that they'd grown. They left it with mum and dad. They were just like, oh, we've got so many avocados. Here's a bag of avocados and here's this. And like we had all this food. And they're the things, like people get so hung up on like abundance is just wealth and money. It's like, no, abundance is it's a mindset first and foremost, but the way that God provides is so much more expansive than just in money and wealth and, you know, like material things. But I mean material things that don't really matter, because obviously food is material, but we need that. So yeah. I mean, honestly, Alexa, I feel like I'm the wealthiest woman in the world because of the incredible relationship I have with God.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People get hung up on where the abundance comes from. They think it has to be numbers in their bank account. They don't realise that the neighbour might bring a bunch of food, or a family member, or, you know, and there's always people that you can ask for help because they want to have an opportunity where they might be able to ask you for help at a later date. You know, those relationships are so important, but people get so isolated, and that's all by design. We're all supposed to be isolated and not know our needs. Yeah.
And community is that we just get in there and help each other, whatever needs to happen. And you witnessed that with your wedding, guys.
Yeah.
You know, so you had an incredible community of people that came and gave not just here and there, but they gave weeks.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, with no expectation of return. It was an honor, you know, to come and help you guys. That's what real community is. And the more that happens, we're changing the energy and the frequency globally. It has a ripple effect that, you know, it then starts to shift, and other people's mindsets start to change as well, because it's a shift that just reoccurs. And that's what is happening. That's what's going to happen. And we're going to see more of it. And people are going to have the right voices. Can I just touch on this? It is time for the right voices to be heard now. It really is. I've sensed it in the spirit so much. It's paramount. And I feel that there are voices that need to be called out for their deception and their BS. And so people can start to bring that discernment too. The very first statement that you made, Isaac, is, you know, we're all at different levels. There's truth in everything that you hear, but you've got to discern what's truth for you. I know what's truth for me, and I'm open to hearing other people's truths, and then I'll go, yeah, that doesn't resonate with me, but that does. And you feel it, and that doesn't mean what they're saying isn't truth further down the track, because truth comes in layers. It comes in an inspiration and awareness and awakening that just continues to happen. That's the momentum that we're in. And what we can take heart in is that truth will always come to the surface. So even in our own being, if there's a lie, if there's something that's hindering us, it will come to the surface, and then you can go, oh, that's what that is. Okay, you're gone now. And we get to grow more into the layers of the truth that is for us individually as well as community and globally.
Yeah, absolutely.
You feel like it has to get to a point for some people to become painful enough to where they'll actually be like, all right, I no longer accept this. I'm going to shift. Like, how has that affected your life? Have you experienced that, or do you feel like that's more for like the really stubborn, really stuck people like me?
I was going to say, let me just preface this a little more, because Isaac and I often have this conversation about Isaac's like, yeah, we need really hard times. And I don't entirely disagree, but he's like, we need to get sick and tired of being sick and tired so that you can get up and like, because that's kind of what motivates him. But I'm just like, I'm not that type of person. Like and I'm not saying I can't, like we've all gone through hard times and difficulties and challenges, but I don't need it to get to the worst of the worst to like get me off my ass. Like I'd rather be proactive and not have to get to that point. But Isaac's very different, but also I think, you know, very different in the masculine and the feminine energy in the way that I would say.
Okay, but can I just say this? With me, it's not that I want it to get to like where we're destitute, but it's the same level of gravity where I'm like, all right, in order to not let it get any worse, I need to really plant my rod in the ground and staff just be like, no, like we're going further, we're going forward, we're not going back to these old patterns of behaviors. And sometimes there's a bit of flame that comes with that, where I'm just like I just have this like, yeah, more of a fiery disposition inside where I'm like, no more, like I'm done, I've had it with this repeat, you know, this going on the record loop.
You can see how he ended up in the military, can't you?
Well, you know what?
That
is a great aspect to get to when you go, nah, enough of being stolen from, enough from, you know, being stuck in generational rubbish and, you know, accepting this life that they tell us that we have to have, which is that 9 to 5 thing that they've put us in. And like, I learnt really quickly in my relationship with God, I was like, I'll surrender everything and do whatever you have to do whenever you have to do it. That's always been my prayer, because I actually don't want to go through really hard times to finally go, oh, duh.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm always looking to learn whatever it is I have to learn. Now, that's me. I know some people, they have to go the hard way. It's just part of who they are, and I just look at them and go, oh, really? Because I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it the quickest way, but still it have the impact and the depth in my life that it needs to have. Now, there are some things that I've learnt really quickly. There are some things that are a bit slower. There are some things that God's had to be, you know, so vocal and in my face, because it was like a thought pattern that I had never ever thought of before. And I think I've shared this with you guys about just in the last 12 months for me, if you want me to share this. I was in the shopping centre helping Jess, and this person randomly yelled out, oh my God, you are so beautiful. And I'm like, what the, I'm going, who's he talking to? Do you know what I mean? I was really shocked. And I had people all around me, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, that put me on a journey where God had to bring healing, because I'm sharing honestly here, no one in my entire life ever told me that I was beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Not my mum, not my husband, not boyfriends, nobody. Well, God did that to me 3 times in a public place. Oh my God, you're so beautiful. And I'm like, what the heck? It made me squirm, but at the same time had to go, oh, okay, thank you. And then I came home and I went, okay, that's 3 times. I'm going, God, what are you telling me? And he says, you don't see yourself as beautiful. And I'm telling you that you are. And I'm like, okay, well, I broke down and cried. And Jess walked into my room. She's going, Mum, what's happened? I'm going, Jess, I've never been told that I'm beautiful. I'm 67 years of age.
Wow.
And she's going, but you are, Mum. And I go, yeah, but no one's ever said it.
Yeah.
And I said to her, your dad never said it to me. My mum never said it. No one's ever said it. This is how God works on your behalf. It can be so random. But if you've got ears to hear, I went, oh, do you know, I've never had so many people tell me how beautiful I am in the last 3 months than I have in my entire life. And I go, wow, thank you. And I receive it. And I can receive it within my being, not just, in my head. That's the healing that God wants for us.
That was beautiful.
He cares about every aspect of your life. It never bothered me that no one said that. I'm never looking for accolades or, compliments. That's not who I am. But boy, it was a breakthrough to hear that.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful story. Yeah, I think life and God definitely has a way of doing that too sometimes, where you're just like, oh, you haven't been listening all this time. Here's a big bump on the head, and there you go.
And I was laughing at it, going, oh, some random guy told me I was beautiful, I thought it was hilarious, but God was speaking. And I just went, okay, I get it now. 3 times. Go, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, Rachel, because obviously you've been through some very painful experiences for certain things that you've had to learn in this lifetime. But what's your experience of that now?
As in, not having the right kind of love, or...
Well, just, anything that comes up for you around that, like what Isaac was saying in terms of how we, learn our lessons and sort of get motivated or inspired to move towards certain things, or, whatever it is we need to. Like, what's your experience of... Yeah, because I guess I imagine you've been on both sides of that as well, like having to go through some really painful things to sort of know maybe more of your purpose or your direction, or... Yeah.
Well, I guess from that perspective, it's really weird because I was actually supposedly the favourite in my family, but that was part of the MK Ultra. So there's a delineation. So the baby or the youngest is always treated as the most precious, and then they're the dobber that dobs on the siblings. And so you see this in these bloodline families. The oldest will have a certain role, middle child will have a certain role, youngest child will have a certain role. So I was told that I was the most loved, but then he would try and kill me and then tell me afterwards he couldn't kill me because he loved me too much. I was just talking about this the other day. One of the attempts on my life was he actually organised for a man to hit me off my bike because he couldn't kill me. Other people hadn't been able to, so that I just kept coming back. So he organised for this guy to hit me off my bike. I didn't have a helmet on, and I ended up with fractured skull, and both my inner ears were busted, and it took 3 procedures to fix that. I had brain fluid leaking down the back of my throat for about 1.5 years to,
wow.
It was actually probably more like 4 or 5 years because it didn't get fixed until when I was about 18. Happened when I was 14. Mm-hmm. What was really interesting though, up until that point, I'd had these chronic migraines, like really, really bad migraines where I'd be vomiting and diarrhea and just really bad, so painful, and a halo where I couldn't see. I still get the halos. I get zero pain. None of the other problems happen now ever since that accident. So it's funny how,
Wow.
there are things that happen if you look at it from the right perspective. Instead of going, oh my God, he tried to kill me again, it was hilarious to me because he then trotted me off to this guy a few weeks later and wanted me to apologise to him at this guy's front door, showed me where he lived, wanted me to apologise. I said, no, I'm not doing that, because apparently it was my fault that he had to try and get me killed off because I wouldn't shut up. But I look at that from a very hilarious point of view. I also feel, somewhat, protected because all these attempts never worked. But I also see the positive in it, because even though they tried to get rid of me, all it did was stop pain. So you can have all these weird experiences, but there can always be a positive if you look at it from the right angle. So what I see from Dottie's beautiful story is that she needed to learn the lesson. 3 times as a charm. So they'll throw it at you a few times, otherwise you don't listen. And I've also noticed, that's the first thing I said to you coming on this morning, was that you look gorgeous or beautiful. I think I might have used the beautiful word.
Yeah,
when you get to higher and higher soul frequencies, you glow. You absolutely glow. I'm astonished that you're 67. I think you did tell me when we met physically that you were, and you look as good on camera as you do in real life. And I remember thinking, oh my God, you know, obviously you're doing the right thing. But this is the thing, when people glow because they're doing what they came here to do, living their soul purpose, they glow in a way that makes them more beautiful. So, you know, you probably have always been beautiful. You've got gorgeous features, but it's when you started to glow because you were doing exactly what you're meant to do and you'd got to this really, really high frequency, people will really notice. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to behold.
Well, I think the glow was there. It was just not the reality of that. You know, it was the awareness of never being told that my entire life. Like I tell my daughter she's beautiful all the time from the minute she was born. Like that's a natural mother instinct. Yeah. So, you know, that's where it was like. And I mean, it not out of vanity or anything like that. It was just like how God is so involved in the intricacy of us. He didn't have to do that. You know, it was like that's important to him that I realize that because he created me. And I think that's part of, you know, what we all need to come into, both spiritually and physically, because again, the world tells us we're never fit, we're never skinny enough, we're never pretty enough, we don't drive the right cars, we don't live in the right houses, we don't behave the right way. And God's breaking that mold, going, no, you're perfect as you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go a little deeper into, we kind of touched on some of these spiritual misconceptions around like abundance. And Dot, I might get you to open up with this because I know that you were saying around the Byron Bay area in particular, which is the easternmost point of Australia, which is just very interesting. And sort of this land, this region that we're in, you felt this, what you call the false Kundalini spirit. So do you want to speak to that? And then let's open up this conversation as to a lot of what we see now in like new age spirituality, which takes a lot of very true concepts and teachings and sort of twists them. And as we know, with deception, there's always a nugget of truth in there, but it's the way that it's presented and the way that it's told to people that's where the deception is. So yeah, tell us more about this false Kundalini spirit that you've picked up on in this region that we're living in.
Okay,
I'm just grabbing a coffee, guys.
Yeah, go for it.
So the encounter that I had, I was at Byron Bay, and this is quite a few years ago, but processing in the spirit like the things that I was seeing, because spiritually there's a lot of stuff in Byron Bay. There's Christian, there's New Age, there's Hinduism, there's etc., Buddhism, the whole kit and caboodle. And I'm sitting there going, what is the attraction here? And God showed me there's a portal over Byron Bay. Okay, and it's a ley line as well. So it's actually got a number of different ley lines that cross over that one point, and it's the most eastern point of Australia. And so that's where the sun rises is seen first. And I'm sitting there going, wow, like all this, you know, everything that's going on in the spirit there, and all the different modalities and the different types of people, and you know, you can see it in the clothes, everything like that. And I'm sitting in the spirit and I'm going, so God, what is the attraction? And he spoke to me, he said, it is a false Kundalini spirit. And I went, oh, okay, I've never heard of that. And so, because this is how God works with me, he tells me stuff that I've never heard of and go, oh, okay, well, I know you're telling me the truth. Now I've got to go find it.
Go research it, yeah.
Yeah, I've got to go research it. And I do love that he does that with me, because I'm never getting it secondhand. Like, he's telling me, so then I go and find it out.
Yeah.
And so, because there's things that he tells me that my brain is not capable of even knowing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's beyond my human capacity, so to speak. So I, so I went and researched what a Kundalini spirit is, and then the false Kundalini spirit. Well, the false Kundalini spirit is connected to the Queen of Heaven or the Queen of Darkness, which is some of the conversations we've had about Astrid and her being the female side of Lucifer, and the work that she does, which is connected to, all the witchcraft and all that sort of stuff. So it was very, very interesting to hear that, because people talk about the Kundalini spirit as the snake that goes up your chakra. And I'm like, yeah, no thanks. Because that's not my belief system. Mm-hmm. That's fine. We're all where we're at. But when he started talking about the false Kundalini spirit, it's coming from Lucifer. It's coming from her. And she's controlling it. So the false Holy Spirit is that there's three entities that are connected with it. And it goes back to Nimrod, which is talked about in the Bible, and he is part of that false Holy Spirit. So yeah, is that what you want to know?
Yeah. So before that, this false Holy Spirit, is that the same thing as a false Kundalini spirit? You're kind of like referring to the same thing.
So, okay, in the Catholic Church, they refer to the Holy Ghost. That is a order that belongs to Lucifer. So, like when children get baptized, they say in the Holy Ghost. Now, I was brought up a Catholic, and I used to go, who's this Holy Ghost? Like, it never sat right. But I've since learned that it is another order that is run by the hierarchy of the Queen of Darkness or the Queen of Heaven, which is the Virgin Mary, the Madonna. That's who she is, as far as a statue or a symbolism. That's all her. That's who people are worshipping.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that goes back to when I read the book, was it Two Babylons by, I can't remember the guy's name, but he talked about the Queen of Heaven. And so my oldest sister, they're Catholic, they're old school Catholic, so they don't like the current Pope. They had a split back in the 60s. And they've always been very kind of open to conspiracies, and they know that there's something up with the Jews, and Catholics can be a little bit more skeptical of that because of the history now, the story about Jesus being crucified and all that. But it's so ironic because they still say stuff. I'm like, there's no mention of the Queen of Heaven in the Bible. I've read through it. I've looked through it. I don't believe they ever called Mary the mother of God. She's Mary. She gave birth to Jesus. She's not the mother of God, like big G God. And yet they'll make this, St. Mary's Cathedral. And I don't want to tear down their whole faith, because I don't want to cause a bunch of strife. But at the same time, I'm always going to stand for truth, and I'll say it whether or not it hurts people's feelings. But it's not my intent to hurt people's feelings. But the Queen of Heaven thing is literally what they called Isis, or the wife of Orion, who's Orion is archetypally or literally Nimrod. Nimrod, Orion, Osiris, those are different names for the same thing. And the wife of that, and Rachel probably knows a ton about this as well, with the obelisks, the symbolism behind that and the stories. And it does actually connect to the Bible with Nimrod. They don't mention his wife at all in the Bible, but that's part of the story, is when he's killed, she basically gives a virgin birth and the birth is like a reborn version of, I forget the Egyptian deity, but it's like Horus or something.
Yeah, well, what I find super interesting is that this Queen of Heaven, this false Kundalini spirit, is this feminine energy, because this spiritual stuff is very feminine. It's metaphysical. It's not of the physical world. And so the way that people are kind of what you're saying, Dottie, is they kind of being tricked into worshipping this spirit in a lot of these new age, because there's so much, for lack of a better term, fuckery that's gone on with all of these new age spiritual teachings, even Buddhism. Like the original Buddhism teachings were a lot more balanced. Now what we know of Buddhism is all love and light. It's like, and there's some beautiful teachings in Buddhism, but there's no balance to it about, they don't talk about like dark entities or any of that stuff. But what I'm learning, I've only just learned this recently, is that the original Buddhist teachings, it's very similar to what's happened with the Bible. Like a lot of it's been taken away and morphed into something else. So that people are only given this amount and it's not the full picture. And then they start living their life in a way that's based on teachings that aren't grounded in what I would say is the whole truth.
Yeah.
Do you want to, Rach, I don't know how much of that you heard, but like, what do you, I'm sure you see it all the time. And I think you mentioned this in the psychic development course about, you know, a lot of what is in new age spirituality, what's taught, and it's become a lot more mainstream, which is also when you kind of know, like you really have to use your discernment, where, they take a lot of true spiritual teachings, take a little nugget of truth, present it in a different way, and then people go and run with it.
Yeah, so there's control in every area. So even the natural spirituality that we have gets controlled in some way. All of the main religions, even Buddhism, talks about demons, but with Buddhists they talk about hungry ghosts. And again, it's that energy take that happens. So every major religion talks about demons, and yet in mainstream academia, it doesn't exist. They don't exist. You know, that's my frustration. Just absolute rubbish, not least of all, you know, the fact that people like myself and Dottie get denigrated as psychics because it's anti-Christian, and yet Jesus Christ was exactly that. And I just can't get my head around the fact that we get attacked constantly by Christians for being what they worship. It's just, and Jesus told us to follow in his footsteps. So with this, it's interesting with the Kundalini thing where people talk about a serpent or an energy coming from the base chakra up. I always felt very uncomfortable with that. And I don't know what you've said, Dottie, so I hope I'm not saying anything against what you've said. But
just
to me,
enlightenment
should come from the crown down. It should come from up here, not from down there. It doesn't make any sense to me. So when people talk about this Kundalini experiences, that's not my experience, and so I don't understand it. It doesn't feel comfortable to me. It feels like it should be coming from the crown down. When I'm talking to somebody, reading for them or whatever, and they say something that's an absolute truth, I'll get shivers from my crown right down to my feet, and it's a very pleasant, happy, cheerful experience. If I've got something through and I express it and I've got it right, I get the same thing. It starts up here and goes down. It doesn't go the other way. So I always find that a little bit confusing, a little bit concerning. You know, all of these different religions are based on these very old gods, very, very old gods, which the Christians would call paganism, or Mesopotamian, you know, gods, or the ancient Egyptians. My personal experience with the ancient Egyptian gods, well, my father he gave his soul to Anubis. Anubis was his, you know, protector. Is also, you know, when he died, and I filmed his, I wasn't invited to the funeral, but I filmed it. And as I was filming, what looked like a peregrine falcon, I'm not sure what kind of falcon it was, it's too far away, but like a Horus type bird hovered over his casket, and I was furious. Wow. Because in my mind that bird was freeing him, and I'm like, no. I was still really angry at that point and not forgiving. No, I think it's actually in the audio, like, what's that bird doing? No, because it was just really weird. It wasn't supposed to be there. I was there to film my perpetrators who turned up, and the complicit family members. And that's my my kill switch, by the way. If anybody tries to take me out, there's understandings that would then be released, because a lot of them are there. Yeah.
Wow.
So interesting.
Well, I was just saying, Rachel, the false Kundalini spirit is actually connected with the Queen of Heaven, or the Queen of Darkness, which is Lucifer's, you know, feminine side of what he does. And that's all connected with, well, she has many names, but Isis and what were some of the other ones we just talked about, Isaac?
Astrid, did you say?
Yeah, you mentioned Astrid. Yeah.
And like you do some of the, when you look at symbols and stuff like that, I went through 12 months learning about how to read the crests and the sigils and how what kind of contracts that they've made. And actually interesting, in Adelaide, I was over there on holidays and I was checking out a church, like in the spirit, and I walked into their op shop and a rack fell on top of me. And I wasn't even moving.
Wow.
And it just touched the thing, and I went, I pissed someone off because I'm looking in the spirit, because I'm checking out all the symbolisms and the red door and whether it was a living building and what kind of sacrifices go on there. And it was like, okay, so you're not happy I'm here, right?
I was going to say, Adelaide wouldn't be happy that you're there, Dottie, after all the things that Rachel said goes on in that city. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I want to highlight a little bit more of that. So the authority that we have is obviously it's given to us from the Creator. It's not like we're these all great and powerful beings, which is kind of more the Luciferian side, where they want you to believe that you're the powerful one, you're the one that should be worshipped. That's like the same spirit. And I see that with especially the Egyptian stuff. You see it around here a lot. You see people that name their little cutesy businesses after Isis and things like that. And I just wanted to point out how the enemy uses that. So people that are like super into Egypt, and I get it, like there's fascination with it. It wasn't all evil and bad, but there was a lot of stuff, ritualistic things that were practiced in Egypt that people are completely like whitewashing or ignoring and pretend that it's just like, that was like peak humanity and we'll get back there someday. I'm like, no. All this stuff with wars and all that, there's actually a term for it. It's called Horus Matrix. And the Horus Matrix was something I learned about from this guy who can translate Demotic, which was the spoken language of the pharaohs. His name's Sean Ross. And you can look him up on YouTube. He might still be around. He made a documentary called The Swiss Beast. But what he talked about with Normandy and the south of France and the invasion there, I always, in the military, when I went through, it was spoken about in like the special operations, like tactics side, as the dumbest thing. Like, that was when they messed up and they realized they needed to change, and that's after that they created like the Navy SEALs and all that. But it was like, it was set up as a massacre. They call it a Horus Matrix, and that was something that pharaohs would actually do. Is they would have, on a spiritual level, have an agreement with the powers over the opposing armies, and they would arrange a time for them to meet and then slaughter each other on the battlefield. And that level of blood magic was used to create long-standing agreements between principalities and who knows what else in that realm. And so when people are like, it's just like the eye at the top of the pyramid. It's like, it's this cutesy thing, like the eye of, I don't know what they call it, Orion or Eye of Osiris, and then the phallic, the thing, all this worship of all this stuff. It's kind of like, it's a death cult, and I've about had it. I'm glad that I didn't get sucked too far into that when I went in the military. But I want to bring it back to like the authority through God that we have to make these changes, and the importance of it and the necessity of actually speaking this out. I do it with a form of like almost like a command, where I'm at that point we talked about previously when it comes to like, I've had it. I'm not going further anymore with this lineage, with this cycle that keeps on repeat, and I'm speaking. At least my word will go out, and you'd be surprised. I guess it's not me necessarily, but it's like there's an authority there that we're speaking out and we're giving a voice to, and I think that's something I want to hear from both of you. Is that a practice that you approve of? Do you feel like there's some more you want to add to that about speaking to something that the Spirit is wanting us to actually speak and act and like bring about?
Well, I'm a big believer in following with what Jesus Christ told us to do, which was to, we have a God-given pineal gland. God-given. That has piezoelectric crystals in them. That is we pick up Wi-Fi, we pick up wisdom, Akashic information, spirit guides, we pick up on souls who've passed over. And as long as we use our energetic protection, we can do that safely and have access to all that is. And that is not making yourself a god, because again, the Satanists and the Luciferians, they worship the self. It is growing in a way that you can access that information, discern it, and share it, because it might help somebody. And I think that's what the whole doctrine of Jesus Christ was. He was the one flipping over the tables, getting rid of the usurers or exposing them. That's exactly what's going on now, with this whole money system's about to completely collapse. So we've got a very interesting paradigm where I think the ripple effect of what his life was like, there's many souls now who are embodying that sort of ripple effect. There's also a lot of souls embodying the Antichrist. I don't think there's just one. I think there's, multiple. So we've got this incredible light and dark war going on, and we're all experiencing it. It's amazing. But I think we're supposed to, everybody who feels called to is supposed to be speaking out, to educate. And I think we're in an education and a clean-up phase. I really do think we're in a healing and education phase, and we're going to get to a point where children that are coming in now in 20 years' time will look back on this time and just be in absolute shock and horror at that it could ever have been so bad.
Yeah. Isaac, absolutely. This is part of what we need to start stepping up and doing more of, is that we speak to the situations, we speak to what's going on, and we bring God's heart and will into that situation, which is exactly what Rachel was just saying. That's what Jesus did. Every situation, he spoke to it, and he brought truth and life to it. He addressed the Pharisees, the Sadducees, all the religious leaders, and he tells them, he goes, you guys, your father is Satan. You've stood at the door of heaven and you have stopped the people from coming in. Now, can I share this? That scripture, I had an encounter with it, that it became a portal, and I got translated into that situation where I saw Jesus saying those very words, and I felt and heard his emotions in that situation. It's a scripture that resonates in my spirit because I've been speaking up against it for years. And that's why I get kicked out of churches. Because I've said to them, I'm telling people, you can hear God for yourself. Yeah. You don't need a pastor or a priest to teach you every Sunday what you can and can't do when they don't even follow the truth.
Yeah.
They are standing at the door of the spiritual realm and blocking it. And that's the voices that need to be heard today. The ones that are carrying the truth, the authenticity, in pointing the way of who God really is. And Jesus is the perfect representation of what we can do on the earth. He's our forerunner. And what we've got to be careful of is the language that people are using, because they're saying certain words, but they're implicating that they are a God. Yeah. And it's very subtle, and I'm hearing it more and more. They're not pointing to the one true God. They're still referring to that we are gods and we co-create with God. He is the author and the perfecter, and we are his creation. Creation can't tell the creator what to do, but we can partner with him. So if there's circumstances and situations, you speak to it. You get that rod. You say, no, enough. We will not have this anymore. We will not tolerate this anymore. You can demand change. It is our God-given right. And there's not enough of us that are doing it.
Yeah, we've talked about this on the podcast recently, a couple of times actually, about enacting our will. And we were given free will. We were given we have the God-given right to be here, to enact our will. And I think that's one of the most underutilized powers is just speaking things into existence, especially with things that are going on in the world. Like we talked about, we did an episode on, we called it Beyond the Epstein Files, because everyone's like, Epstein Files, and we're like, there's nothing in there. If anyone looked into Epstein 5-6 years ago, there's nothing that came out that you didn't know from 5 or 6 years ago. Like, it was nothing new. But so many people, Epstein and all these people he's linked to. And I was just like, really? Like, who doesn't know about this already? And so we were talking about how not to get roped into these things, because obviously, and I don't know what else exactly was going on. There was a few things going on. I can't remember them off the top of my head now. But when things like this get dropped in the media and the media run with it and it spreads like wildfire, there's a million other things going on in the background that they don't want you to know about. And it's just a massive distraction. And but on the same token, we can't ignore that these things happen. The things that Epstein was involved in and all the people involved with him, like, these things have happened and they do happen. And it's very easy to fall into that trap of feeling very helpless and like, what can little old me do? But literally just that, like, just speaking, just doesn't matter who hears it, because, like you're saying, Dot, like, the creator he's always with us. So just saying, like, I don't consent to these things happening anymore. Praying for the people that have been impacted by this, that have, been traumatized by not just things like that, but anything going on in the world, what's going on in Israel at the moment and Lebanon and the Middle East and all of these things. We need to start actually speaking it into existence, what our will is. And I think that does a world of wonders, but unfortunately people don't believe that it does, which is sad.
Yeah. Well, the lie is that, we're all insignificant and we're powerless. So if we start stepping, and it's interesting because especially if you're a female and you are passionate, then you are labelled as, controlling or a Jezebel spirit, and, because you're bringing truth. And it's like, you need to leave, and you're just like, whatever. And it's like, we've got to come out from underneath that, and we speak it. So, with that too, Alexa and Isaac and Rachel, is that, I get lots of downloads. I have lots of dreams. I can see bad things before they come. And I'm sure, Rachel, you know 100 people like that. But it's like, I used to get frustrated because I'm going, God, I can't bring a change. Like, I can't stop it. And he says, no. He says, I want to show you that so that I can, because he's shown me, it can come onto the earth. The answer to what he's shown me. Because I do, because I'm like to fix things. I want to physically go and fix things. And he's going, no, I've just partnered with you. You're the gateway or the doorway or the entrance of that answer to come onto the earth. That's why we need to speak it. That's why we partner with him. Lots of people know, so many little old ladies that are in the cupboard doing their work in the spirit. They will never know their name in this world. But it doesn't matter. It's your name in the spirit that's more important. Now, I walked into a town that was very, very strong in witchcraft, but I didn't know it at the time. I just happened to walk into this town, and all this stuff started happening. And I remember looking up in the spirit, into the air, into the sky. I saw this huge manifestation of a demon just looking at me. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? And we were getting attacked. We were getting blood put on our cars, all sorts of things. I was getting tarot cards that are saying I was going to die. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I'm going, God, what's happening? Like, it was really like in my face. And he goes, Dottie, your reputation in the spirit has gone before you. I'm going, what reputation? What are you talking about? Because I've done so much stuff in the spirit. The town knew when I came into town, I was going to move stuff. And I was a bit shocked. I was like, I didn't know I had a reputation. And God's going, yes. And he said, that's more important than anything in this world. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? How do we counteract this? And so I had to go on a journey of dealing with that sort of stuff over that town. And that's when I met lots of witches and learnt a lot of things about what goes on in covens and how to help them. And, you know, it was full on. Very interesting. So many stories there, just like Rachel had so many stories.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Anything more you want to add, Rach?
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't get the pushback that I used to, demonically, but I have had situations recently. So it's interesting what you were saying before about when you walked into a church, Dottie, and the rat tried to fall on you. I did have a situation. I was singing in a choir for a while, and there was one church which ended up being a sister church to St. Peter's Cathedral, which I exposed.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't realise at the time. So obviously, this demonic entity knew that this was going to be happening, and it tried to attack me while I was singing in the choir, which is surprising because normally we were singing like churchy songs too, which, you know, just because that's what the choir was doing. I don't have any problem singing about Jesus. It just was a bit weird. Anyway, this entity tried to attack me, and it was massive and huge wings. And as soon as I saw the size of it, I thought, well, you're not really that significant, because it was bluster. It was all bluster. And it tried again at a later date, unsuccessfully, because I just didn't allow it to have any power over me. And this is the thing. This is what you can do. But they can appear very big and scary, big black thing with huge wings. Can seem very scary. It's not. It's really not. So if you recognize that you have this auric field around you, you're like a battery source, and as soon as you get a shock or go into fear, like a sensation, little holes appear in the aura, and then these entities can steal some energy. So as long as you know that, you know it's just a bully that wants to get your energy, your power is not being affected by it. So I remember as a child training myself not to be afraid of spiders, because there were a lot of situations where I was stuck with spiders. And so I don't get that fear. In fact, I pick them up and I move them around because they never bite me, because they know I'm not afraid of them. So you can train yourself not to have that fear response, and they can't get anything out of it.
That's a great analogy, Rachel. That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah, and so that applies to everything, because it's the same thing for the things, you know, people see on the news, or the things going on in the world. People go into that fear response, and yeah, what's sad about it is it's like it's also very normal. Like we're humans, like normal human beings with love and empathy and compassion. It's normal to respond in fear, because, and especially like, you know, you hear a lot now, like in terms of social media, like we're so exposed to things that we weren't 50, 100 years ago, just because of the internet and news. And because even before, like the news cycle wasn't what it is now. It was like, I imagine in some cases it would take days for news to get out, you know, even as much as the media industry is very corrupted, and even back then it was. But now it's instantaneous. Something happens on the other side of the world, you can see it like within minutes. And
there used to be a 6 month latency with what was coming out on the internet and what was actually coming out in the news, and that has just shrunk down to almost nothing, because the news is totally irrelevant. So yeah, you've got a really good point there.
Yeah. And so there's all this talk about how our nervous systems are so, like we can be put into these states so quickly, and also how it's like not, I don't know how much I believe this, because again, I think it depends on your energetic agility and how you can move between different states without it affecting you too much. But for the general population, it's probably not super healthy to be seeing like this atrocity that's happening, you know, on the other side of the world, and then you flick and then it's like, oh, it's a funny video, and then I'm laughing hysterically or whatever. And it's like, that's generally speaking not very normal for us to experience life in that way. So yeah, it's so important to become, and obviously, like I'm sure anyone listening to this show probably doesn't watch the news, probably hasn't for years, but as much as we can switch off to that stuff, because then it does open you up to, I find, and I can definitely speak to this in my experience, when you start to shut off all of these distractions and all of these sort of attacks on our energy and the way that we use it, that's what does open you up more to receive things from the spirit and be more attuned to nature and the people that you're around, your relationships. And you do then become more like solid in that, and you're less swayed by whatever's going on. Because I don't watch news. I also don't, I'm on social media, but I don't go on it a lot. And I don't, like, my feed just doesn't, my algorithm, I just don't see that stuff because I don't look at it. So when people tell me what's going on, oh, have you seen petrol prices? I don't know how long petrol prices had been up before I even realized when someone said it and it started getting talked about. I was like, oh, really? I was like, okay. And everyone's, oh, yeah, fill up and we should be filling up jerry cans and all this stuff. And I was like, it'll be fine. This too shall pass, just like everything, just like COVID, just like, you know, every war that's ever been. This too shall pass. And the less energy we give it and fear and, oh my God, and when everyone's up in arms, the less we give it that, and they do. And I mean, even the petrol prices went down pretty quickly. And I was like, yeah, because that's what was going to happen anyway. And I think these things do cycle through even quicker the less energy we give it.
Yeah, the less people believe it and the less they're able to, and there's some of us that are like saying that, like I'll say that, and it affects people, other people's lived experience in a way. Like during COVID, I was living at my parents' place and had been laid off from the oil field, and as everything's going on, like we were having a blast. Like it was probably the best time for us, but it was because, well, we had a little bit of a separation from it. We're in Wyoming, but because of the internet, there were no mandates. They weren't going to like make you do anything, but people went along with it anyways, as if there was a mandate, because they projected that influence into their minds. And all it takes is just one person, like in a family group, to just be like pointing out the obvious things. It's like an invisible particle. Like if you can smell it, you're breathing in a particle of it. So pardon my crudeness, but if somebody farts and you smell it through your mask, that mask isn't doing anything to stop that microscopic particle. And the potential virus is supposedly much smaller than that. So I was just pointing out these obvious things, and I'm like, we don't follow this nonsense. It's just the world is doing what the world has been doing ever since I was a kid. My mother was very clear about that and 100% right. From a Christian standpoint, she talked about being set apart. Like, oh, that's just world she's very Southern. She's like, that's all just nonsense. That's just world just going crazy. She'd just say that stuff. And you just kind of stop paying as much attention to it. And then I come back as an adult with them in a new era of this stuff that seems and looks more severe, but remind them of those things that they taught me. And then my mom's feels very comfortable, and she goes into stores. She's the only one not wearing a mask, just smiling and, how you doing? Praise God. Like she's she's just like that. And that I'm sure did something. Somebody saw that and saw how free she was. And then it trickles outwards. So some of us, I think, probably have a bit more voltage around that, where we say and do things that affect maybe a little bit wider.
100%.
Pushes that message out further. And we need to be doing that now. Like with the gas prices, same thing. Like we'd voice that to our family here and be like, it kind of sucks, but like we'll always make more money. Like we'll always be provided for. Just reminding people of that truth. Like our God, the Most High, created everything. There's nothing that is like really kept from us if we ask. So it may not come in the way that you think, but if you're worried about anything, let that go. Like give that to God. And then I think it's more important to speak, not just repeat the news, but speak what we want to see happen, because it's not really, like Alexa mentioned, our will. I don't see the dividing line between my will and God's will. Sometimes I'm not God, but I'm inspired, like that spirit is within me. So that would have something to do with my will, because I think a lot of it comes from him. There's a verse in the Bible that says he will give you the desires of your heart. And when I was a teenager, I had this realization that it's like, it's not just that I have all these things that I want on my wish list and God's job is to just give it to me. He actually shapes what kind of things you would want in the first place, and like teaches you about how wonderful and amazing the world is. And you can have those things, like escaping a fire or somebody coming out of nowhere. Like I didn't even know that was possible because I would assume if someone showed up out of nowhere and helped me escape a burning building, that was like an angel. Or it could just be Dotti, who's just been put on assignment. Yeah. And that is her desire. Dottie's desire is to go out and do these assignments. And so God gives her the desire of her heart, and she gets to go out and do these amazing things. So it's a cool thing to be reminded of, and to let people know, like, it's getting more potent. The more crazy and scary it gets, the more you have access to maybe new abilities that you didn't know existed, but you'll find it when the time comes.
Yeah.
That's why it's fun to talk about the things of the spirit, because it actually becomes a gateway of possibility, in that when other people hear some of the things that we've done in the spirit, they go, oh, I want to do that too. And so they start to ponder on it, meditate on it, and start to ask for it. And then all of a sudden they're doing it. And that's the importance of sharing our stories, no matter what it is in the things of the spirit, what's possible. Like I hear people, I love talking about the spirit, but I love hearing people's story, and I go, oh, I remember the first time I heard someone went on assignment, I went, what? You can go on assignment? I want that too. And it's like, and then guess what? You can, come out of your body. Oh, I want that too. What else is there? What else is on this smorgasbord of things? Oh, well, you can change dimensions. Great. Let's relocate. Let's time travel. Let's take authority. Let's bring healing to people. Let's work with angels. Let's change the world, because that's what we're called to do. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's fun. Life is fun when we do it with God. This world is actually quite boring and very ordinary, and I just love to talk about the things of the spirit. I love to move in the spirit. I love to see God move and change people's lives and set them free. That's my passion. That's my drive.
Yeah, love that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love that. Just love hearing you talk, Dotti, and how enthusiastic you get. But absolutely, you get when you start being more exposed to the spiritual realms and what goes on. Yeah, you realize how limited this world is. But it's like this paradox of, like, we're limited to physicality in this world. That's a truth. But also, we place a lot of limitations on ourselves as to what we can do here because of the conditioning we've received. And I think that's why it's so important to have people like you guys on to speak about this stuff and speak about your experiences. Because I know with both of you, like doing your psychic development course, Rachel, and, having been to many of your workshops, Dotti, and having you as such a close friend, like, it's definitely opened me up to what's possible. And it's exciting. Like, it's super, I've always felt super inspired by, hearing your stories and going, wow, you could do that. Like, and, and also just the wonder of, like, exploring that for yourself and how it shows up for you. Like I said, like, I've got this, I'm just living a whole other life in my dreams. And now I'm just like, it excites me to explore that more and more and see where that takes me. But then, for other people, they are more of like this psychic medium where they see things, or people just can experience that stuff in so many different ways. And I think it's just so, so important. Like, now is the time, and we're seeing it, but this is the time now where people, we started this conversation with you saying, Rachel, like, a lot of souls are leaving the earth. I think a lot of new ones are also coming in that are just on a whole other level to anything we've ever seen before. And so this is the time, like, for people to step into their power, step into their purpose. And we are changing this world. The world that we know is, I think, either going to be no longer, I think to a point it will just be no longer, but I think it's going to get to a point where it's almost just going to become irrelevant to most people. And that's what we need to focus on, the new earth, the new world, the new earth that we're creating.
Love it. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for your time. This has been a long time coming, trying to get this round table going. I was actually thinking about it this morning. I was like, I think it's been a year I've been trying to get this organized, because I just knew it would be such a great conversation. And just for our audience, please let everyone know where they can find you, whether you're on, I know you're on socials and stuff, Rach, and anything you've got going on, because I just recently learned that you've got 2 psychic development courses now, like sort of 2 different levels. So please tell us more on how people can work with you.
Yeah, so I'm actually, I don't know when you're going to put this out, but I've got my course starting this evening. So I've got an advanced psychic development course that's 8 weeks long. I've got a 4-week first level course, which is more focused on ley lines and aura reading. And if people want to find me, just go to sixthscience.com. So 6, the number 6, thscience.com. I'm taking the 6 back from the assholes. And all my socials and stuff are all on there. And I've also got leylovedown.com, Ley, lovedown.com, where people can actually join up with others all over the world and go out and have a positive effect in a ley line or a crossing point of ley lines in a portal space to make a big difference.
Amazing. And Dot, where can people find you?
The ley line works is awesome, Rachel. I think it's really, really cool what you've started there. You can find me on spiritreality.org. And I offer my services there, but I'm just upgrading my webpage and going to have ebooks and start putting some more courses together. We've still got to do the immersion course so we can start teaching people about that. So once I get past this wedding, Jessica's wedding, then I can start concentrating on the things that I'm meant to be doing, and I'm going to do it with full gusto. No holding back for me anymore.
I love it. Love to hear that, Dot.
I think, Rachel, it'd be great. I think I'd like to have a reading. Let's see what you've got on me.
She's incredible. Yeah, you'll love it. Thank you so much, guys. And we'll definitely chat to you again soon.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rachel. Really appreciate having a chat with you too. And Isaac and Alexa, as always.
Thanks for tuning in to the Natural AF podcast, where we explore holistic healing modalities, mindsets, and methods that reconnect us to nature and our natural state of being.
If something resonated, share this episode and see the show notes for our guest links, as well as all of our discount codes for our aligned affiliates and Natural Art Form, where we handcraft a range of organic, natural remedies to help support your body's natural healing abilities and help support the show.
If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a few seconds to leave us a rating and review. And if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, hit the like button and drop us a comment, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for the latest updates.
We're not here to conform, we're here to remember what's real. So step into your power, be curious, and be natural AF.